Chapter 86 Mysterious Realm. Chapter 86 Mysterious Realm. Chen Xiang curled his lips and said, "You heard what that woman said a moment ago? Besides, I already told you earlier, she is my fiancée." Shui Xianxian's name in the martial arts sects of Qinwu mainland had reverberated like lightning, because at the age of only 15, she was already a true martial realm martial artist. These days Chen Xiang also found out that he himself had fallen behind Shui Xianxian by a large margin. B-A-S-T-A-R-D. B-A-S-T-A-R-D. Such a good girl, how is she willing to marry someone like you? Zhu Rong looked jealous and shook Chen Xiang's body, and anyone could see he really wanted to hit Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang's injuries were much better now. After Elder Dan was gone, everyone else came to Chen Xiang's side, and inquired about his well-being. The expression in their eyes when they looked at Chen Xiang was also full of respect, and spoke things such as if there was an opportunity to get some advice and so on. Chen Xiang, Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De were the only ones who could enter the third assessment, and although there was an age difference between each of them, they were very good friends, so they only hoped that the third assessment would not be sparring with each other, as that was too brutal for them. At this time Chen Xiang controlled his breathing, rested for about half an hour, and then thought in the end who Elder Dan was. "Meiyao sister, Yu sister, do you have any clue?" asked Chen Xiang. "No, but it is not necessary that you know this woman. You should know trying to understand a woman's heart is very difficult. It may be because of only one look in your eyes or something about your behavior that gave her a bad impression and she hated you, or maybe she really was good to you and wanted you to stay in the outer sect," replied Su Meiyao. "This woman's strength is not bad, and she actually has a fire spirit. If I'm not wrong, it should be the purple moon fire spirit," said Bai Yu. "Yes, it must be the purple moon fire spirit, and according to legends, the moon suddenly became purple and the aura it emitted shone on the land of the mortal world. That land was engulfed by the purple flames, and was incinerated for July 7th, 49 10,000 years, 490,000. Only after that fire was extinguished did that land in the mortal world then have life, flowers, grass, ses, and trees born out various kinds of life. At that time a fire of life was also bred out, and it was known as the Purple Moon Fire Spirit, but this is the legends of the Purple Moon World." "Does this woman come from the Purple Moon World?" said Su Meiyao. "TLN. July 7th, 49, the number 49, square of 7 is used in Chinese folks, Taoist and Buddhist rituals. For example, it is believed a recently deceased spirit will linger in the living world for 49 days, so a second requiem is always performed at the end of 49 days. Similarly, many rituals are required the performer to undergo a 49-day cleansing, fasting, etc. Chen Xiang had not expected one fire spirit to actually have so much history, and he secretly determined Su Meiyao and Bai Yu had once traveled many worlds. "I do not know. Wait for me to get married to her. Later on I'll ask her and then we'll know," Chen Xiang said with a depraved smile. "God knows how many years we would have to wait. This woman could be in the Nirvana realm, which is the topmost existence in the mortal world," said Su Meiyao. After restoring his injuries, Chen Xiang was pleasantly surprised to find his body had become a lot stronger, but it was also very clear his true qi was enhanced. After getting tossed around, his true qi was compressed, and its quality was enhanced by several times. Within a short period of time, the elevation was so distinct, which made Chen Xiang secretly shocked, and he began to suspect that Elder Dan may not really be malicious, but just wanted to sharpen him. It was just that her way of doing things was too strict and extreme. "Wait for me to enter inner sect again and be admitted in the extreme Dan courtyard. At that time I can enjoy two kinds of treatment," Chen Xiang decided, and he was suddenly curious about Elder Dan. In order to have contact with her, he could only go to the extreme Dan courtyard, because Elder Dan was the head of the Extreme Dan courtyard. Chen Xiang, Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De were led by Zhu Rong to the innermost region of the extreme martial sect, and Chen Xiang and the others could see courtyards of various sizes. The 99th Inner Sect Martial Courtyard is where we're going? Yun Xiaodao, looking at a numerical engraving, exclaimed. We're going to the Elder Courtyard. I also went there during my third assessment. Zhu Rong patted his round belly, and there was an eerie smile on his face. The third assessment is not as frightening as second assessment, but it is still quite difficult. But after passing through there will be many benefits. To their surprise, they had to go to the Elder Courtyard, the residential area of all the elders of the extreme martial sect, which made Chen Xiang and the others to feel a lot of pressure. Chen Xiang was also worried that because of his conflict with Elder Dan, this may have caused the whole Elder Courtyard to be against him. Then he really would not be able to mix in the extreme martial sect anymore. The extreme martial dean went into closed-door training for many years, and now all the affairs are managed by Elder Wu. Elder Dan is always kind of elusive, and throughout the year will not appear even once to give lectures. Said Zhu Rong, the Elder Wu is responsible for third assessment. Elder Wu was number 3 character in the extreme martial sect. He was very harmonious and amicable, and although his cultivation was very high and remote, he did not have even a little bit of arrogance. Many disciples liked him, which made Chen Xiang and the others to let loose a deep breath, as at least they did not have to face someone moody like Elder Dan, this strange woman. This is the Elder Courtyard? It really is a little different. Yun Xiaodao didn't expect that there actually would be a paradise here in the extreme martial sect. There were not any kind of buildings here, but instead there were mountains and lakes with a very vast prairie, and although it was now night, but a bright moon and many starlights were ning here. The scenery here was very beautiful. Tielin, imaginary land of joy and plenty, in other words, paradise, Shangri-La. So why can I not see this type of scenery from the outside? Moreover, it looks like it is bigger here than Tianmen City in the outside, said Chen Xiang with some doubt. Ha ha ha, this is one mysterious realm, and one can only see the inside things when they are near it, but if you're looking from far it will be blocked by a kind of mystical power. What you're looking are only some of the things present before the entrance of the mysterious realm. A bald old man, but with a long white beard and long white eyebrows, suddenly appeared behind Chen Xiang and the others. Chen Xiang and the others were startled, and they quickly turned around, only to see a bald old man right in front of them slightly smiling, with a pair of narrowed old eyes right under the long white eyebrows looking very harmonious. Mysterious realm, some small independent S.P.A.C. This was equivalent to one small world, and was very mystical, like how this mysterious realm was not very big, but if looked at from the outside it was invisible, and only if one went through its entrance could one clearly see. It was still a mystery how this kind of mysterious realm was formed. Chen Xiang and the others have heard the legends of the mysterious realms, but they actually had not expected for one to exist in the extreme martial sect. Moreover, it was also in the Elder Courtyard. Elder Wu! Chen Xiang and others shouted in unison, and gave a salute to this old man. Elder Wu's name was Wu Kaming, and he was responsible for the safety matters of the extreme martial sect. He was one ruthless character, and it was confirmed that once to save his own apprentice, he rushed in alone to a Devil Path sect, and rescued his disciple. No need to be overly courteous. Wu Kaming, happily smiling, said, "You're Chen Xiang? Elder Dan asked me a moment ago to make things difficult for you in the third assessment, but I refused. I do not want a disciple to hate their sect, but having said that, you truly are one of a kind, making that woman suppress a lot of anger. Fortunately, she is not an overly bad-tempered woman, otherwise she would have beaten you to death. We old men can only say a few words on the surface to her." After hearing this made Zhu Rong, Yun Xiaodao and the others break into cold sweat. Chen Xiang said with a smile, "So it seems I really do have very good luck, but now it seems to be she is no longer going to do anything against me? Regarding this, it can be counted as I was easily let off. Hard to say, this woman's temper is a little strange, so you better not let her continue to hate you, otherwise you will be tortured by her in such a way that you will wish for a death," Wu Kaming said while laughing, and regarding Chen Xiang, such rare and wonderful flower, he was very much interested. As for Chen Xiang's potential, it was very obvious to many people that Elder Dan was intentionally making things difficult in his case, and he was still able to pass. No more nonsense, I'll not start talking about the content of the third assessment. Some regions in the mysterious realm, you will have to carry on a mission to hunt and kill demon beasts, and you must do it within 3 days, while each person must hunt 3 grade 10 demon beasts. There are a very large number of demon beasts inside, and their strength is also comparable with yours, so as long as you complete this, you can pass the third assessment. Chapter 87 Elder Courtyard. Chapter 87 Elder Courtyard. Chen Xiang and the others, regarding the mysterious realm, didn't know too much, and just knew that it was very mysterious. Moreover, it had regions where a large number of heaven-bred treasures existed, and even had a large number of demon beasts. For martial artists it was a natural treasury, but there were also many unknown dangers. Elder Wu saw them having a doubtful expression and immediately said, "The Elder Courtyard had already been moved into this mysterious realm, and this mysterious realm's ins and outs are well known to us. This is already within our control, so you do not have to worry about encountering the strong demon beasts. The only strongest demon beasts are grade 10 demon beasts." Zhu Rong asked, "Haven't all the heaven-bred treasures already been plundered by you? If these 3 guys picked up some of the remaining treasures, will they have to hand those over to you? At my assessment, how is it that I didn't have this kind of assessment?" Elder Wu scoffingly said, "Little fatty, you and your family are really like that old fatty. If they come and pick up some good things, they do not need to hand it over to us, but it must be reported to us for us to know. If you want to dispose of it, then selling it to the extreme martial sect takes precedence." In the third assessment, they actually had to hunt and kill 3 grade 10 demon beasts. This test was indeed a test of one's combined strength, and Chen Xiang was looking very forward to it. In front there are 3 roads, respectively leading to 3 or more demon beasts' locations. This is the storage belt which can store a large number of things, and you also need to bring back the demon beasts' corpses. Remember, you cannot pocket them or else we'll know about it. We are the ones who place the demon beasts inside, but after you kill them, you can get half of demon beast, which can be considered a reward for you. Elder Wu took out 3 black belts and handed it to them. Chen Xiang and the others took the belt, and afterwards mutually encouraged each other. They then embarked on the roads that led them deep into the mysterious realm. "Elder Wu, where is the Elder Courtyard?" After Zhu Rong saw Chen Xiang and others leaving, he looked around but did not see any kind of building. "Secret, in short, it is inside, but I can tell you that Elder Dan also moved a few of her small courtyards of the Extreme Dan Courtyard. So long as you enter those few small courtyards, you will be able to stay inside for a long time." Elder Wu mysteriously smiled. The Elder Courtyard of the Extreme Martial Sect had always been a mystery, and no one knew how many old men were in it. They also didn't know their exact strength, as people only knew a few of the elders. Sometimes it is not needed for one to be very powerful to enter the Elder Courtyard, and as long as you reach a certain stage, you'll know. Every once in a while there will be an Elder assessment, and once you are able to pass that, you'll be able to become an elder. Elder Wu patted Zhu Rong's shoulder, then took him away. Chen Xiang was walking on the road, watching the numerous stars in the beautiful sky, breathing the scent in the air, and he felt that it was very rich in spirit qi here, and sighed in his heart. I did not expect the extreme martial sect to also have such a big mystery and even have a mysterious realm. I think they have almost exploited all the resources of the mysterious realm and now preparing to announce their extreme martial sect's confidential secret. This will create momentum for the extreme martial sect," said Su Meiyao. "Sister Meiyao, have you seen any other mysterious realms?" Chen Xiang asked. "Of course I have, but nothing like this where it is so beautiful. There are some very dangerous places, but inside they also have a lot of heaven-bred treasures. This is a fact," Su Meiyao replied. The extreme martial sect could stand at the peak in the Qinwu mainland, and they reached such a stage depending on this mysterious realm. In an old mansion of a courtyard, 3 transparent crystal BALs were hanging as high as the height of a human, and from the 3 crystal BALs one could clearly see Qin Xiang, Yun Xiaodao, Zhang De, their silhouette. It was like a picture that was overlooking from the sky. Next to the 3 crystal BALs there were 20 or so people, and among these people there was also Wu Keiming, Elder Dan, and some other old men or women. There were also several middle-aged and young people, but most of them had a mask on their face. Because a number of years had passed since any disciple had passed the second assessment, and now there was Chen Xiang, this remarkable young man who passed through these elder courtyards. Elder men and women all wanted to take a look at Chen Xiang and how he would pass through the second assessment. This Chen Xiang brat is so talented, and certainly did not reach this stage by the guidance of an ordinary person. He must have a powerful guy behind him, but why did he come to the extreme martial sect? We have never seen the martial technique he uses, and although they are not very high-ranked, but comparing it with the martial technique of same level they are very strong. One average-looking young man said. Hey, I'm truly not clear why Elder Dan would want to play with such a large gambling stake with him. What if in the 1 in a million chance he wins? Said Wu Keiming while laughing. Other people also expressed their surprise. Elder Dan coldly snorted and said, "Old man Wu, if you beat me now I'll immediately marry you. As long as anyone here can beat me, I'll marry him." Body said anything again. Wanting to win against Elder Dan was not an easy thing, and even the extreme martial dean who went into closed-door training would also not dare to try. Now we have to find out why this brat came to the extreme martial sect, that young man said. He should not have any kind of motive, as according to what we have gathered, he came to the extreme martial sect just to elevate himself. Although he can use formidable martial skills, but it is not by much, and I think he may have come here regarding this. Wu Keiming replied. It is also likely that he came here just to enhance his alchemy techniques, but he should not even think about entering the extreme Dan courtyard, Elder Dan sneered. Do not be so sure. Didn't you say before that you'll not let him pass through the second assessment? But he still successfully said, and also showed off in front of you. Elder Wu said while laughing. Humph, this brat. Sooner or later, there will be a day when I'll ask him to clear all the debt. Elder Dan snorted and said, I hope he does not have any bad motive, otherwise, we'll not be lenient. That young man said. Elder Wu nodded his head and said, Anybody interested in receiving him as an apprentice? This is a very good seedling. Moreover, we can also have a clear understanding of him. Everybody here were capable people and certainly elder courtyard members, so all of them were very powerful and had strong authority. At this time they were having a discussion. They had already seen Chen Xiang's potential, especially his indomitable personality, had also obtained most of their appreciation. Whoever dares to receive him as an apprentice, you are against me. Elder Dan suddenly shouted, making everyone once again quiet down. Even if Boss Dean wanted him as an apprentice, I'll make him not feel any better. Not to mention, it is still not an uncertainty whether or not he will enter the true martial realm. For many years have we not seen many geniuses stuck in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm for a lifetime? Everybody could see that Elder Dan hated Chen Xiang very much. At this time they were also the same as those disciples, and did not understand why would Elder Dan hates Chen Xiang so much. Girl, you're stingy. Is not because that young arrogant little fellow contradicted you or anything? Are you still preoccupied with it? One old man laughed and shook his head, and after everyone heard, their body could not help but tremble, because they knew that this mysterious Elder Dan was very vengeful, and the person whom she hated will not have a good ending. A long time ago, few fearsome devil lords in the devil path used words to blaspheme her, and she made their fate totally worse than death. Chen Xiang at this time was smiling, and leisurely walking on the road, watching the beautiful mysterious realm. He totally didn't know that he was being watched and discussed by a group of strange old men, and moreover he didn't know that Elder Dan was thinking of another way to make things difficult for him. Chapter 88 Treasure Hunt. Chapter 88 Treasure Hunt. The road Chen Xiang was originally walking on was paved with bricks, but now it suddenly turned into a dirt road. Chen Xiang also psyched himself as he felt he had entered the demon beast-infested region. He left the prairie region, arriving at a region with many weeds, and he suddenly noticed something. There seems to be humans. Demon beast's breath should definitely not be like this. Chen Xiang was uncertain in his heart as he felt a few humans hiding inside the thick patch of grass. Chen Xiang's body shook a little, releasing a wave of true qi, and the weeds all around him were shattered, only to see 4 young men, who were wearing the extreme martial sect disciples' dress appear, while each of them had a black stick in their hand. "What do you want to do?" Chen Xiang loudly asked, and he sensed a kind of polished fire qi emanating from these 4 disciples' bodies. These 4 individuals were fire attributed, and they were all exuding a slightly medicinal herb smell. Only someone dealing with herbs all year around would have this kind of smell. The 4 men were in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, while at the same time they moved and surrounded Chen Xiang. "You are Chen Xiang?" one man with delicate and pretty kind of appearance asked. "Yes." Chen Xiang's voice fell. Meanwhile the 4 men at the same time waved their stick in their hands towards Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang immediately released a qi aura Hi plus ELD, blocking off the 4 incoming iron sticks, sneered and said, "You are from the extreme Dan courtyard, right?" Chen Xiang's words made the 4 men's whole body tremble, but they did not say anything and continued to attack Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang concluded that these 4 individuals were inner sect disciples, but also from the extreme Dan courtyard, as their strength was also not bad. 4 black iron sticks turned red, burning with severe flames, and released a scorching hot qi aura. Someone was stabbing, another was striking, and another was raising their stick to attack Chen Xiang. ED note. Not sure what the 4th guy is doing, but ask the author that question's tongue sticking out. The 4 men's strength and Chen Xiang's was just about the same, and sensing the fearful power that they released, Chen Xiang only now understood the difference between an inner sect and outer sect disciple. It was a first for Chen Xiang to be surrounded by several equally matched opponents, but he did not panic. His brow wrinkled, and an endless slaughter qi permeated from his body, shrouding the 4 people's bodies, making them suddenly startled. The moment they became surprised, Chen Xiang fiercely did a 360-degree kick, and vermilion bird true qi and azure dragon true qi gathered on his legs, blowing out a fearful fire and lightning power, kicking off the iron stick in their hands, which was then followed by a fierce jump into the air. "Were you sent by Dan? Tell her, if she sends someone again, then don't blame me for being impolite. Whoever hinders me in the assessment, I'll destroy anyone." Chen Xiang's voice was filled with slaughter qi, and from his back burst out a firelight. A pair of flame wings in the blink of an eye were congealed on his back. Chen Xiang released the vermilion bird fire wing, and flew out of those disciples' encirclement. If he had not casted the slaughtering heart, then he definitely would still be surrounded by the 4 men, and it would be very difficult for him to get out. At the least, he would have to spend his time and strength. Inside the courtyard, Wu Kaming sighed and said, Dan, you should just give up. This brat's slaughter chi is very heavy, and if he gets mad, maybe he would really start killing. Flames were glittering in Dan's pupils, and seeing the Chen Xiang traveling in the air in the crystal ball, she could not help but clench both of her fists, and coldly snorted. Seeing Chen Xiang's gorgeous and dazzling vermilion bird fire wing, all the S were filled with envy, only to hear one old man talking with a sigh, this true chi wing compared with mine is much better. You look at those feathers. They are simply lifelike, as if these flame wings are grown from that brat's flesh and blood. In the end, what kind of martial skill is this? Yes, his speed is also so fast, and if he also had more strength, then his flying speed with this true chi wing would be much faster. Another old man closely watching Chen Xiang's vermilion bird fire wing spoke. Chen Xiang, under the 4 men's staring eyes and open mouths, fluttered the vermilion bird fire wings and flew away. Of course, he himself didn't know that he was always being watched. Chen Xiang, it is best that you remain low-key. This is the extreme martial sect's old codger's site, and your each and every move is known by them. Bai Yu reminded him. After Chen Xiang heard that, he slightly raised his little mouth, dived to the ground coming next to a tree, unlocked his belt, and while humming started peeing. Someday, I'll have to take a good look at this brat. Dan clenched her teeth and said. She then flung her head and left. Chen Xiang pulled up his pants, but heard a burst of a very faint sound. It was like someone or something had stepped on a fallen leaf and emitted a very subtle sound. Good fellas. In such a far place someone shady has come over. Chen Xiang was listening with rapt attention, and he did not expect he would encounter a demon beast so soon. Chen Xiang, in this mysterious realm there might be some treasures. Didn't that old baldy say that what you found is yours? Human beings cannot be compared with these demon beasts. They are naturally born with a mystical spiritual sense, which is capable of finding some rare and exotic treasures. If you can track these demon beasts, perhaps you'll find some good things, said Su Meiyao. Chen Xiang's eyes had an excited look and he said, I understand. Here there are our demon beasts because these old men intentionally put them to search for rare and exotic treasures. Grade 10 demon beasts were equivalent to humankind's 10th level mortal martial realm, the completion stage, but in line with their demon beast constant intuition and innate ability, Grade 10 demon beasts were much more powerful than ordinary 10th level mortal martial realm martial artists. Here demon beasts are common demon beasts, so if you use your dragon-slaying divine martial skill, or divine exercise of 4 symbols, then you can easily deal with them. These martial skills imitate the divine beast's breath, so if an ordinary demon beast senses it, they will be scared. But it is useless in dealing with true martial realm demon beasts, said Bai Yu. Chen Xiang also did not expect the divine exercise of 4 symbols to have this kind of benefit, and he started DOS HI+ing towards that weak sound he had just previously heard. Chen Xiang was running swiftly, and while quickly moving he also sensed that hidden demon beast, so he quickly dashed towards the demon beast. Not too long after, Chen Xiang and that demon beast met, and both of them, with breakneck speed, collided with each other at the same time. The moment Chen Xiang collided, he punched out a fist, striking that demon beast's body. This beast was covered in a black armor, and it was a panther with blue-eyed. It could not be counted as too big, but this was a very sensitive demon beast, worthy of grade 10 demon beast. My fist struck it, but it did not inflict even a little bit of damage. Chen Xiang saw that blue-eyed panther swiftly and violently hurling towards him, and he could not help but exclaim. Chen Xiang's body shook, a golden light surged out, and in his heart he was silently reciting the heart law. The white tiger true chi within his body transformed into dragon aura as he was casting the dragon slayer divine martial skill. Although this was an incomplete dragon slayer divine martial skill, but it could allow Chen Xiang's body to release the weak pressure of a dragon, and in addition to this it was filled slaughter chi made out of the white tiger true chi, which made it even more frightening. As Bai Yu previously said, common demon beasts were very afraid of this kind of breath, so when this kind of breath swooped over, the body of the panther fiercely trembled, and its speed also decreased by a lot. Chen Xiang blasted a fist towards that shuddering blue-eyed panther, struck its head, and made it howl, but after falling to the ground it once again stood firmly. Good fellas, it did not fall. Chen Xiang teasingly looked at that shuddering blue-eyed panther. The blue-eyed panther emitted a growl, and unexpectedly turned around and dashed away. This guy unexpectedly is scared of me. Chen Xiang laughed and quickly followed it and was even faster than that blue-eyed panther, while his body was emanating dragon chi aura made of slaughter chi. The people inside the courtyard were very shocked after watching this. The demon beast was actually scared off by a human, like how a mouse saw a cat and flees, and in the hearts of a few old men, suddenly a bad feeling emerged. Chapter 89 Azure Profound Fruit. Chapter 89 Azure Profound Fruit. Chen Xiang could overtake the blue-eyed panther anytime he wanted, but he was intentionally pursuing it neither too fast nor too slow. His goal was very obvious. He wanted to follow this blue-eyed panther and take a look at its eventual destination. The old men inside the elder courtyard quickly saw through Chen Xiang's intentions. This made their hearts a bit uncomfortable. Chen Xiang followed the blue-eyed panther until they arrived next to a large tree. That blue-eyed panther climbed up onto that large tree as Chen Xiang soon followed. Above that tree was a hollow entrance. As Chen Xiang went inside the opening, the blue-eyed panther started howling and trembling. There was no escape route, only a dead end. Inside that hollowed-out area there was a haystack, upon which were a few stones that resembled eggs and emitted a strong azure aura. Chen Xiang sucked in a mouthful of cold air and exclaimed, "Azure profound fruit, and 5 of them! This is the key material required for refining a foundation building dan." The azure profound fruit was a type of tuberous fruit. Very rarely did the roots under the ancient trees sometimes start to gather a large amount of spirit chi. If at the right place and time, along with some special conditions being met, the roots may turn into a fruit. However, having a tree meeting these prerequisites was extremely rare. After being briefly shocked, Chen Xiang quickly took these 5 fruits and placed them into his storage pouch. Then he said with a smile to that blue-eyed panther, "Thanks. I will spare you life for this." Jumping down from the tree, Chen Xiang was very excited. He quickly left that part of the forest. He had never expected that he would obtain 5 azure profound fruit. But this was even more shocking for the elders inside the elder courtyard. Although they were all very strong experts, seeing this little devil who had not even entered the true martial realm obtain such good materials, they could not help but envy him. Morning arrived as warm sunlight permeated the atmosphere throughout this mysterious realm. Currently, Chen Xiang was holding a steel blade and standing high above a mound, watching the lush green prairie for demon beasts. This annoying brat is just standing there in broad daylight. He's seeking his own death. That's the grazing area for the grade 10 iron armor bulls. Elder Dan sneered. This brat has some bizarre and unique martial skills. He's actually able to make demon beasts fear him. Is this a type of dragon martial art? Wu Kaming had a doubtful look on his face. At this time, Chen Xiang, who was still standing on top of the mound, saw around 20 bulls coming out from inside the forest. Marching with a heavy pace, each one was howling, their bodies covered in a topaz-colored armor that looked very sharp and tough. The one leading the herd had 2 scythe-like horns protruding from its head. From its posture, it seemed ready to charge and crush anything in its path. All of a sudden around 20 or so beasts appeared. Not only that, but they were grade 10 demon beasts. If any ordinary martial artists saw this, they would surely choose to avoid the herd. But Chen Xiang wasn't an ordinary martial artist as he drew out his blade and rushed towards the pack. This crazy brat! Isn't he just seeking death? Wu Keiming could not help but exclaim. Although he had some grasp about Chen Xiang's true strength, he did not think that Chen Xiang would be able to deal with all the iron armor bulls. Seeing someone rush HI+ing toward them, the herd of iron armor bulls suddenly started bellowing. The relatively larger bull leader rushed out from the herd and emitted an angry growl. Its thick and strong hooves trampled on the prairie with each step sploz. HI+ing various GRASS and dirt up into the air. Letting out thunderous sounds, it dashed towards Chen Xiang, and along the way even aroused a burst of fierce wind. The two giant horns on the iron armor bull were pointing straight at Chen Xiang. It was like two sharp and giant thorns were speeding towards him. Before the bull was about to reach him, Chen Xiang stepped aside and at the same time brandished his blade in a chopping motion. Chen Xiang had poured his vigorous true qi into the broadsword, which in turn transformed into a qi aura that gushed out of the blade, making it even more sharper. Clang! The steel broadsword slashed onto that iron armor bull's neck as sparks and intense qi waves burst out from the impact. Chen Xiang's steel blade was shattered into pieces. He did not actually manage to cut the bull's neck, and only destroyed his own weapon. At this very moment, Chen Xiang realized that common ordinary grade weapons would not be able to easily deal with grade 10 demon beasts. Even though he added his vigorous qi aura, his blow only shook the iron armor bull and nothing more. Chen Xiang's blow actually caused 0 injuries to the bull, and it was clear how strdy the bull's iron armor was. This brat is still too immature. You know, sooner or later, he'll suffer a setback. Elder Dan sneered. She and Wu Keiming were looking at the large bull herd that was galloping towards Chen Xiang from far away. Chen Xiang threw away his broken weapon as his complexion turned serious. He clenched his hand into fists and revolved the invisible true qi within his body. In response, the true qi from the 5 divine beast forms as they surged out and gather at one place, transforming into the colorless and invisible universal true qi. This was Chen Xiang's true strength, simultaneously using the true qi of the 5 elements. Dragon Aura Fist. The universal true qi that was around Chen Xiang's fists was suddenly converted into dragon aura. The aura surrounding his fists instantly changed and looked as if they had been molded out from pure gold. With terrifying power and momentum, punches flew out one after another in a seemingly endless storm of piercing qi waves. Seeing this draconic might suddenly appear, the bull was terrified as its whole body started veering. Chen Xiang relentlessly and ruthlessly pounded the bull with a barrage of blows. In the blink of an eye, dozens of punches were sent out, and in that moment the golden fist's images were HI+ing, all of which struck directly onto the bull's head. Whenever a blow landed on the iron armor bull HI+ing blood soon followed. Chen Xiang's fists sheathed in the destructive qi aura broke through the bull's head and entered into the bull's body as it destroyed the inside of the bull. In just a few seconds, more than 200 clean dragon aura fists landed onto that bull's head. Afterwards, the iron armor bull fell down with a loud thump. After Chen Xiang entered the 9th level of the mortal martial realm, his true qi became even more vigorous as the result of being compressed. Even if he were to continuously use the universal true qi to launch his violent attacks, he did not need to worry anymore about his true qi consumption. The remaining 20 or so iron armor bulls that were HI+ing at him from afar were also subjected to that faint draconic pressure. Their instincts screamed in fear, and they turned around to quickly try and escape. Chen Xiang fiercely leapt into the sky, like an arrow fired from the ground into the air, and flew over the entire herd of bulls. He then emitted a crazy howl before blasting a palm towards the ground. This blow of his suddenly burst out into an azure and red aura. The source of these two class HI plus ing auras was the vigorous azure dragon and vermilion bird true chi, which he had completely released and fused together into a fearsome chi aura. He then used his divine sense to gather and compress it to form the enormous palm. After the compressed true chi from Chun Xiang was completely released, it looked like something solid, unlike the previous gas-like form. The giant palm fiercely pressed downwards, completely covering those 20 or so bulls. A thunderous booms resounded as the land burst into a fierce tremor. A huge palm imprint emerged onto the prairie's surface. Chun Xiang withdrew the rest of the remaining true chi and poured it into the two dark beast forms inside his dantian. The beast forms were similar to transparent crystals. As long as they were filled with true chi, they would start emitting aura once more. Chun Xiang flew down from the air and walked towards the sunken palm imprint. In just a blink of an eye, those 20 or so bulls had been crushed to death and turned into gigantic meat patties. Inside this crater that resembled a palm imprint was an area was filled with blood and meat, creating a very nauseating scene. Wu Kaming blinked his old eyes a few times, just to make sure he wasn't going senile before he squeezed out 2 words from the gap between his teeth. Abnormal freak. Just like him and everyone else watching, they had been secretly shocked by Chun Xiang's strength. In their opinion, only an elite few disciples among the inner sect martial courtyard were capable of such a feat. It must be known that those inner sect disciples have been here for a long time and learnt many martial skills and compressed their true chi to a very rich form. Collecting the ravaged corpses of the bulls, Chun Xiang backtracked. He wanted to quickly enter the inner sect. Chapter 90 Détente. Chapter 90 Détente. Chun Xiang had just instantly killed 23 grade 10 demon beasts. Furthermore, it was done in a very leisurely manner. He soon returned to the original starting point, where he waited for Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De. After waiting for almost a day, Chun Xiang saw Zhang De with an expression full of happiness walking in the distance. From just one glance, he could already tell that Zhang De had completed the task. Old man Zhang, congratulations. Chun Xiang quickly laughed. Hey. Same to you, Chun Xiang, but you have pas, said the test in one go. Furthermore, you're so young. You're really someone with boundless prospects. Yun Xiaodao still hadn't returned. This made Chun Xiang and Zhang De somewhat concerned, but they did not have to wait for long. Suddenly, they heard a hawk's cry followed by a kind of very proud laughter. Ha, I earned a lot. Yun Xiaodao's laughter resounded. Chun Xiang and Zhang De looked up, only to see a giant black hawk flying high in the sky, seated on which was a grinning youth. Yun Xiaodao had actually tamed a black hawk. Taming a demon beast is a very difficult thing to do, but Yun Xiaodao had done it, and had indeed earned a lot. All 3 returned safe and sound, moreover with a very rewarding experience. At this time, Wu Kaming and Elder Dan also arrived before them. Treasures that you have obtained yourself or demon beast corpses you have brought, as I said before, are yours. However, you do need to report them. Chun Xiang took out the ravaged corpses of the 23 demon beasts which had been morphed into the giant meat patties, along with 5 azure profound fruit. This scared Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De, who both emitted a high-pitched shriek of shock. They were very clear about the iron armor bull. They knew it was a gregarious type of demon beast, moreover with very strong defensive capabilities, and decent power. Yet now they were nothing more than giant meat patties. With just a glance, they knew that Chun Xiang started with a heavy hand and had, in a single breath, gotten rid of these demon beasts. 23. Elder brother Chen, you truly are abnormal, Yun Xiaodao said. He then took out the corpses of 2 tiger-type demon beasts and one of a large bear. He then embraced the giant black hawk behind him and said, Lao He has been tamed by me, therefore he belongs to me. That is natural, Wu Kaming said with a smile. Zhang De had killed 4 giant wolves and also found a 3,000-year blood ginseng. His harvest was also not bad. Are you going to sell those azure profound fruits? Elder Dan asked while staring at the 5 fruit placed by Chen Xiang onto the ground, which was circulating in azure light. Not selling, said Chen Xiang with a low snort. Azure profound fruit. Zhang De and Yun Xiaodao were once again shocked. Chen Xiang had actually gotten such a good thing. This made both of them secretly jealous of Chen Xiang's luck. The rank of the foundation building Dan could not be counted as a high rank, but the herbs required for making it were very rare. The costs and rarity for these herbs could even be compared with those needed for some high-level dawn. The azure profound fruit was one of the main ingredients, and even though its rank was not that high, the foundation building Dan was a wonder drug in helping someone enter the true martial realm, so they were sold at very expensive prices. Sell it to me, afterwards I'll help you in refining the foundation building Dan for free. I do not casually refine pills for others. Elder Dan was also very interested in the azure profound fruit. Although she had previously obtained 10 of them, they had all been quickly used up. It was really a long time ago, and she had not since refined a foundation building Dan. If you had previously not made things difficult for me, giving you one of them would not matter to me, but now I'll not sell it to you for any price. Chen Xiang flung aside his head. He does not want to see her again. Yun Xiaodao hastily pulled Chen Xiang in the next instant, fearing that he would provoke Elder Dan's anger. If that were to happen, it would become very troublesome. 500,000 crystal stones for one, will you sell? Elder Dan sneered. She does not believe that Chen Xiang would not be tempted. I will not sell. Chen Xiang firmly replied. 1,000,000 crystal stones, selling or not? Elder Dan coldly asked. Sold. Chen Xiang grinned. 1,000,000 crystal stones was absolutely not a small amount, and if he was not going to sell, well then he was an idiot. Furthermore, this would also be bad for his relations. Hi+P with Elder Dan. Humph, I'm not going to buy. Elder Dan said, and like an angry little girl, stamped her foot on the ground and turned to leave. Chen Xiang curled his lips and said, "Tch, this woman is breaking her promise. Earlier she had said she would marry me if I win. I laboriously defeated her and now she's going back on her words. What should I do?" When Elder Dan heard his statement, she turned back and coldly said, 1,000,000 crystal stones. I'll buy. Chen Xiang really wanted to rip off Elder Dan's mask and take a look at the appearance of the extreme martial sex, only female. How is the relations? Hi+P between you and the divine weapon Heavenly Empire's Empress, is it okay? Chen Xiang asked. He had suddenly gotten an idea. We're both female and our relations. Hi+P is also not bad. Why do you ask? Elder Dan replied. I'll give you 2 azure profound fruits. Can you help me refine 1 set of the foundation building Dan herbs, and then send 1 Dan to Shuexianxian and the other to Lingyulan in Icewind Valley? Chen Xiang's eyes were rotating. At most, successfully refining a complete set of herbs for the foundation building Dan would result in 2 dawn if done without any wastage. Normally alchemists were only able to refine 1 Dan, but Chen Xiang firmly believed that Elder Dan was capable of producing 2 dawn. I will not take your crystal stones. It can be regarded as a gift to Elder Dan, Chen Xiang said. He really did not want to have such stiff relations with Elder Dan, because later on he not only wanted to enter the Extreme Dan courtyard, but also planned to stay in the Extreme Martial sect for a very long time. Maybe in the future, when he goes out to explore the Qinwu mainland for experience, he might stir up some trouble. At that time, he may need to get shelter in the Extreme Martial sect. Wu Keiming, Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De could all see Chen Xiang's reason for acting like this, and they also very much supported it. Elder Dan was silent for a moment before saying, Do you want to know why I hate you? Chen Xiang shook his head, sighed then said, I would very much like to know. If you defeat me I'll tell you. Elder Dan picked up 2 azure profound fruit. With far less hatred in her voice, she asked, "Who is Ling Yulan to you? You already have Shui Xianxian as your fiancé, yet you still think of others. Men really are like this." Chen Xiang quickly explained, "Yulan is my sworn sister and I had sent her to join the extreme martial sect. However, I did not know the extreme martial sect's rules beforehand, which is why she later went to Icewind Valley, but that is too far away. I cannot go there anytime soon, and as her sworn brother I must take care of her. That's why I can only request this favor from Elder Dan." "Humph, sworn sister? That's a nice way to put it. Who knows what other intentions you have in your mind?" Elder Dan finished speaking, turned around and left. Chen Xiang and the others were slightly surprised. Elder Dan's voice had a tinge of jealousy in it. "Elder brother Chen, I've been calling you this from the very start. Will you also take me as a sworn brother or not?" Yun Xiaodao said with a depraved smile while looking at the 3 azure profound fruit in Chen Xiang's hand. Chen Xiang blankly looked at Yun Xiaodao before replying, "You're a very rich guy. You do not need to care about this little thing. Elder brother Chen really had ill intentions when receiving your sworn sister," Yun Xiaodao muttered. He also knew a bit about Ling Yulan. She and Shui Xianxian were similar, both were known as one of the most talented in the younger generation. Wu Kaming coughed dryly twice before saying, "You are starting to resolve the differences between you and Elder Dan. This is very good. Now I congratulate the 3 of you in becoming one of the extreme martial sect's inner disciples. You can take away half the demon beast corpses that you have acquired. Later on, little Fatty can walk you through the inner martial courtyard so you all can get familiarized with it." After the 3 of them took away the demon beasts' corpses, they left the mysterious realm extremely excited. Zhu Rong had been waiting outside for them for quite some time. Because the relations Hi+P between Zhu Rong and Yun Xiaodao was quite good, he was arranged to guide Chen Xiang and the others through the inner sect. TLN. Détente is a French word meaning release from tension. Here it is referring to the easing of relations between Elder Dan and Chen Xiang. This term is often used in reference to the general easing of the geopolitical tensions between the Soviet Union and the United States, which began in 1969. Chapter 91 Inner Courtyard. Chapter 91 Inner Courtyard. The most excited person was Yun Xiaodao. As he walked out of the mysterious realm, he clamored to go to the squinting guy to ask for his 1,000 true Qi Dawn. Zhu Rong, seeing Yun Xiaodao easily win 1,000 true Qi Dawn, was very jealous in his heart. On the basis that 1 true Qi Dan was sold for 500 crystal stones, then 1,000 true Qi Dawn would be equal to 500,000 crystal stones. This was a huge amount. "Elder brother Chen, 90% of the 1,000 true Qi Dawn are yours, and 10% is mine. After all, I only undertook the gambling stake and nothing more. I spoke thoughtlessly in that matter. I did not expect to gain this much," Yun Xiaodao said with a grin. Although this number was very large, in his eyes it was not accountable for anything. Over the many years, he had eaten far more than this amount. When Chen Xiang saw Yun Xiaodao not paying any attention to the 1,000 true Qi Dawn, he could not help but secretly suck down on his tongue. But once he remembered that the Yun family was one of the 4 major families within the extreme martial province, he also felt that it was not a big deal for Yun Xiaodao. Just one major family held a ton of crystal stone mineral resources, herbs, demon beasts, etc. Although they were not comparable to major sects, but they were regarded as the richest right afterward the major sections. "Fatty, your Zhu family is similar to my Yun family. Your wealth should also be comparable to ours, right? Because you are also very stingy and treacherous." Yun Xiaodao patted Zhu Rong's back and said with a laugh. Zhu Rong only snorted in response. From the posture of his body, one could tell that his family foundation was very thick. Zhang De shook his head and let out a sigh. If one has a good background, It may very well allow them to struggle less for a few decades. Chen Xiang and the others followed Zhu Rong and headed towards the 329th martial courtyard. This was the weakest martial courtyard among all the inner martial courtyards. It was also the location where all the new members had to go after entering the inner martial courtyard. There is not a single person? Yun Xiaodao doubtfully said. Afterwards he shouted, anyone? Quickly come out to greet the newcomers. Zhu Rong curled his lips and said, do not shout. For many years, no one has entered the inner sect. It has always been like this. Qin Xiang asked, so to say, the disciples of this inner martial courtyard have all gone to higher-ranking martial courtyards? But if so, then shouldn't some disciples be defeated and forced to come here? Zhu Rong nodded his head. What you said is correct. However, the inner martial courtyard disciples perform many missions which are very important and dangerous. Although there are more than 300 inner martial courtyards, but each one has no more than 10 inner sect disciples. Where I am staying right now, there are only 5 disciples. Being in the inner martial courtyard comes with good benefit. Every month you can receive 300 true Qi Dan and 3,000 crystal stones, and every year 1 true elemental Dan. Also, whenever you go out to perform the missions, you will also get some healing and detoxification Dan. Besides, there was always the reward for completing the mission. Zhu Rong got the precious white jade Dan that way too. All of the disciples of this inner courtyard are dead. In fact, up to the 300 inner martial courtyard, every single one is empty. Zhu Rong's complexion turned serious. Being an inner sect disciple is not extremely dazzling as everyone thinks. They also have their own life-threatening missions that they were required to complete. Then why did you not take us to the 300th martial courtyard? Yun Xiaodao blankly looked at Zhu Rong. Little rascal Yun, I did this for your own good. If you move up a few numbers forward, then the tasks you will receive become more dangerous. You should wait for Chen Xiang to enter the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, and then move forward step by step. Zhu Rong replied. Chen Xiang also agreed. We have just entered the inner sect. We can now learn more higher-leveled martial skills. Only after we get a good grasp on them and our strength stabilizes should we move forward. Come on. I'm only in the 200th martial courtyard. Took me a very long time to rise up to that level. You better clean up the place, I'll leave now. Zhu Rong walked away very quickly. He was worried Chen Xiang and the others would ask him to help them clean up. This martial courtyard contained many small houses. The residence and marital courtyard were at the exact same place. Later on, Chen Xiang and the others did not need to take a different road to head to the martial courtyard from their residence. I'll not sleep here. You two can hurry up and clean it yourself. Yun Xiaodao giggled and then also left. Because no one has lived here for many years, there were a lot of dead leaves and dust gathered around. It took most of the day for Chen Xiang and Zhang De to finish cleaning the courtyard. Chen Xiang decided to stay in a building with a ton of training equipment. He did not find much use to these equipments. They were not too light, but one needed to spend a large amount of time to exercise with them. This kind of stuff is only used to kill time. For genuine practice, one needs to carry out a variety of extreme training or go out and gain experience. Zhang De said. At this time, Yun Xiaodao came back and excitedly shouted, Elder Brother Chen, I went to look for that squinting guy for the true Qi Dan. This guy actually very readily gave me the true Qi Dan. Quickly take a look to check if it is not false. As for the gambling stakes, Chen Xiang had not cared too much. He believed that if you were to ask for the 1,000 true Qi Dan, it might become troublesome and might even escalate into a conflict. Yun Xiaodao took out 10 jade boxes. Inside each box were 100 true Qi Dan. After Chen Xiang examined them, he determined that they were not fake. Although the quality was not as good as his refining, but they had reached the standard requirement. Yun Xiaodao only wanted 1 box. Chen Xiang originally wanted to give a box to Zhang De, but he was unwilling to accept. In the end, He bought the box for half of its price. Zhu Rong once gave Chen Xiang a box with white jade dan. Chen Xiang wanted to thank him and also gave one box to Zhu Rong. In spite of this, when he took the box his face was filled with jealousy. He had intended to buy 3 boxes for half the price, however in the end he was kicked out by Yun Xiaodao. Yun Xiaodao only wanted 1 box, and Chen Xiang originally wanted to give 1 box to Zhang De, but Zhang De was not willing to accept. At last he bought the box with half of its price. Utterly shameless fatty! Yun Xiaodao cursed. We are now also considered inner sect disciples. We can go and pick up some things. You can also go to the inner courtyard regular hall and look for good exercises of the profound and earth level. Yun Xiaodao excited shouted before Russ. Hi+ing out of the martial courtyard. To receive these materials, one had to go to the inner martial courtyard or the extreme Dan courtyard. A true martial realm disciple was responsible for overseeing the process. Chen Xiang received 20 true Qi Dan and a true elemental Dan, as well as 3,000 crystal stones along with a handy level 9 ordinary grade weapon. It was a dragon head broadsword. TLN, dragon head on its hilt. Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De also casually received their weapons, and they did not pay any attention to it afterwards. Walking on the road towards the inner courtyard regular hall, Yun Xiaodao saw Chen Xiang playing with the dragon head broadsword and asked, "Elder brother Chen, is that level 9 ordinary grade weapon any good? Me and old man Zhang use spirit grade weapons." Chen Xiang was startled. He suddenly understood why they could casually receive the same weapon. They actually had spirit grade weapons. The cheapest level 1 spirit weapon cost tens of thousands of crystal stones, so it was not that surprising for them to have one. "I've never seen a spirit grade weapon before, how is it?" Chen Xiang asked curiously. Yun Xiaodao took out a broadsword and very proudly said, "This is a level 5 spirit grade weapon, Sky Wolf Sword. It cost me 1,000,000 crystal stones. The material used to forge it, adamantal iron wolf bones, is extremely hard. Furthermore, above the blade are spirit vein carvings which can absorb the spirit and fuse it with spirit true Qi, making the original true Qi stronger. Inside the blade there are meridians similar to that of us humans. When one pours their true Qi into the blade, it can have an unhindered flow of true Qi. The hilt is also inlaid with the adamantal iron wolf's beast Dan. If the beast Dan were to be excited to release the demon beast's true Qi, then it would become even more formidable." Chen Xiang could see that there was indeed beautiful and profound lines above the blade. After being illuminated by sunlight, the text was sparkling, and it was very beautiful. That thing there could be considered in top grade among the level 5 spirit weapons. Although it only cost 1,000,000 crystal stones, its overall value is incomparable to that number. Relying on the connections of the Yun family, you managed to get a well-known refiner to forge this," Zhang De said with a look of envy mixed with jealousy and hate. Chapter 92 Divine Martial Skill. Chapter 92 Divine Martial Skill Level 5 Spirit Weapons were indeed very expensive. Chen Xiang had a refining weapon scroll. Whenever he had spare time, he would also take a brief look through it. He had a grasp on the difficulty of refining a level 5 spirit grade weapon, which was at least several times harder than refining a level 1 spirit grade weapon. This old man only has a level 2 spirit grade sword, but it was worth 500,000 crystal stones. Zhang De also took out his own spirit weapon. The sword was very simple, but on the blade there were spirit veins, but just not as complex as the ones on Yun Xiaodao's Sky Wolf sword. "Old man Zhang, what if these were to go against each other?" Yun Xiaodao grasped the hilt as the spirit veins on the blade suddenly burst into a bright light, becoming even more beautiful and charming. Zhang De regarded his level 2 spirit weapon as his lifeblood and quickly put it away with a bitter smile, saying, "In your eyes a spirit grade weapon 3 levels below yours might be similar to an ordinary grade weapon, but for me it my lifeblood. I will not court my own destruction just to satisfy your curiosity." Chen Xiang was also debating whether or not to get a spirit weapon. The last time he tried to use a normal ordinary grade weapon to kill that bull, it was like trying to break a stone with an egg. If he had a good spirit weapon, then carrying out later missions would become a lot more convenient. Refining himself a weapon was an impossible task. Chen Xiang was already extremely busy with alchemy, and he had no time to spare to learn how to forge a good weapon. Regrading spirit weapons, you do not need to worry. Your little wife is faring quite well in the divine weapon Heavenly Empire. You can simply ask her teacher to refine a weapon. You might as well use the spirit veins transforming into runes aspect from the refining weapon scroll. With the help of those spirit veins you can manufacture spirit runes. It is mentioned that spirit runes and spirit veins on spirit weapons act in a similar phase. Hi+on. Su Meiyao said. Regarding runecrafting, Chen Xiang was also confused because rune masters were much rarer than alchemists. Although there were some poor spirit runes in the market, reputed rune masterworks had never been sold or even heard of. Ordinary rune masters were only able to refine some common spirit runes and had not reached the level where their runes were unique and powerful. Chen Xiang and the others arrived at the inner courtyard regular hall. There was a total of 3 floors. The first floor contained low-grade profound-level martial skills, the second floor had the high-grade profound-level martial skills, and the third floor had the low-grade earth-level martial skills. Inner sect disciples could only learn these 3 levels of martial skills. Chen Xiang was unlike Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De, who as soon as they arrived rushed straight to the top floor. He wanted to first take a look at the low-grade profound-level martial skills, because he knew rank does not necessarily represent the strength of the martial skills. A combination of factors in each aspect was used to determine the strength and power of the skill. Just like how he could use the Heavenly Tiger Storm Killing Fist and display strength equal to a high-grade martial skill. FUC, King tricked us. There are only 3 low-grade earth-level martial skills. Other people have learnt them and don't want others to do the same. Yun Xiaodao came down from above with a look of disappointment. Zhang De had a similar expression. There are only a few dozen high-grade profound-level martial skills. There are only plenty of low-grade profound-level martial skills. How is this the strongest major sect? The martial skills are only so-so, I've come here in vain. Yun Xiaodao cursed in a low voice. In his imagination, the strongest sect should have thousands, or at least hundreds. The inner courtyard regular hall manager, an old man, said with a smile, "For many years many inner sect disciples have come here, and every time they were just as disappointed as you were. But in the end, they stopped complaining and have not commented on this matter. Do you know why?" Chen Xiang also felt that it was a bit strange. If the extreme martial sect's martial skills were this bad, then they would not have been labeled as the strongest. There must be something else to it. Why? Yun Xiaodao asked. That old man smiled and answered, "Even in the Qinwu mainland, the extreme martial sect is one of the most powerful sects. How could these low-level martial skills be the strongest the extreme martial sect has to offer? We have a lot of heaven-level martial skills, but now they are more commonly known as divine martial skills." Divine martial skill? Divine exercise? The extreme martial sect had a lot of them. This was a huge shock to Chen Xiang, Yun Xiaodao and Zhang De as they stood there speechless. While it not the same type of divine exercise as those in the legends, the heaven-level martial skills have largely been improved. The advantage to these kinds of martial skills is that its strength changes depending on your own power. As your strength increases, so does the might of the martial skill. If you want to have one, you better find a teacher, otherwise you will only get one if you become a true disciple. The old man said. Chen Xiang had no intent to find a teacher, but even if he wanted to there would be no one who would dare take him. This was because Elder Dan had made a public statement that whoever receives him as their apprentice, she would go against them with all her might. Why didn't you say that earlier? That's way too simple, Yun Xiaodao swiftly ran away. With his talent, finding a teacher is rather easy for him. As for Zhang De, he also swiftly walked away. Are you the one called Qin Xiang? You don't need to go to look for teacher. Elder Dan has commanded that no one is allowed to receive you as an apprentice. These were Elder Dan's words, and even the dean must listen. Hey, as soon as you came you annoyed Elder Dan. In the entire history of the sect you are the first person to do so. Look out for yourself. The old man patted Qin Xiang's shoulder. Qin Xiang cursed in his heart. If I knew this earlier, I would not have given the azure profound fruits to her. She even cut off my path. My purpose in coming here was only to learn martial skills. How could it turn out like this? Qin Xiang was very upset in his heart. If he did not have a teacher, he would only be able to learn these divine martial skills once he reached the true martial realm. Although the martial skills in the divine exercise of 4 symbols was formidable, it was not stronger by that much. Furthermore, if he wanted to learn them, there was certain level of strength required. Divine martial skills were mostly in the hands of the true disciples in the true martial realm. These true disciples were also allowed to receive and teach apprentices. If they were to pass their skills onto an outsider, they would be seriously punished. 5 days passed as Qin Xiang swept through the entire inner courtyard regular hall. Ultimately, he only borrowed 2 martial skills, and they were both earth level. Shocking Heaven Palm and Profound Aura Finger. There are very refined martial skills and the bodily requirements are also very high. Take a Shocking Heaven Palm, for example. You needed the strength of the meridians in your arm to be at a very high degree, and they should be able to withstand a sudden release of large amounts of true qi before you can release its fearsome might. Meanwhile, the Profound Aura Finger needs you to temper your fingers through training such as immersing them in hot molten iron, baking your fingers in intense fire. You need to forge your fingers like a weapon should be. Old man, I know this already, hurry up and register it for me. Qin Xiang impatiently replied. He saw thick dust piled on these 2 books and knew that very few people took them because of how difficult it was to practice. However, in his opinion, it was not that difficult for him. After the old man registered the skills, Qin Xiang took the books and left. These past few days he had not seen Zhang De or Yun Xiaodao. Later on he learned from Zhu Rong that they were undergoing an assessment. Because they both wanted to find a teacher, they needed to satisfy the teacher's requirements and pass their assessment. Rest assured, if you want to enter the true martial realm, the only obstacle in your path is time. The 2 martial skills you chose are also not that bad, Su Meiyao said while comforting him. This was because it was she who made Qin Xiang come to the extreme martial sect in the first place. If Qin Xiang was not satisfied, it would be rather embarrassing for her. Qin Xiang did not blame her because he knew that Su Meiyao's knowledge about the extreme martial sect was from a very long time ago. It was natural for these things to change with time. Qin Xiang's body had already underwent refinement in the immortal devil pool. His body was in the embryonic stage of an immortal devil body, which was why he already met the requirement. He could easily master the Shocking Heaven Palm and the Profound Aura Finger. Chapter 93 Extreme Dan Courtyard. Chapter 93 Extreme Dan Courtyard. Qin Xiang now had 2 true elemental dawn, which were high-grade spirit level dawn. Even in martial sects, dawn of this level were extremely scarce, which was why it was generally very difficult to obtain them. That was why many individuals collected their own herbs and hired an alchemist to refine it for them. Do not eat these dawn. Not too long ago you have just entered the 9th level of the mortal martial realm. You better make sure to first familiarize yourself with this state and wait for the time when you try to impact the 10th level of the mortal martial realm. At that moment, swallow it down in one breath. Su Meiyao said. Qin Xiang sighed. Just as he received the true Qi Dawn, He only wanted to know as soon as possible how it tasted. Shocking Heaven Palm was a type of martial skill with a fearsome attacking power. In the blink of an eye, it could release a large amount of internal true chi and generate a type of wide-range, invisible shockwave that could be used to attack from a long distance. At the same time, it could also be used for pinpoint attacks, and if one wanted to block it, they would have to waste a lot of their true chi. Shocking Heaven Palm. Chen Xiang's 5 fingers spread out and a palm was blasted. In the blink of an eye, a dozen or so trees had been broken right in front of him, and the soil in the ground also shook like a crest of sea wave. It truly had an overbearing might. Chen Xiang had been practicing inside a mountain forest owned by the extreme martial sect. Had he been inside the martial courtyard, then perhaps the whole place would have been smashed. In just 3 days I was able to execute it. That's quite quick. Chen Xiang, seeing good result, was very satisfied. Another. Let's try out the profound aura finger. A light azure chi aura surged out of the top of his index finger and wrapped around it. At this time, although the chi aura looked very calm, it also gave off a very oppressive atmosphere. Chen Xiang lightly poked this finger against a slab. A small hole immediately appeared, as if he had not poked a slab but a piece of tofu. Not to mention this slab, even if it was a level 9 ordinary weapon, once it was clamped by 2 profound aura fingers, it would also immediately shatter. Hey, if I use the colorless invisible true chi, wouldn't it be more formidable? Maybe spirit weapons can also be broken. Chen Xiang said while laughing. He was very satisfied by this low-grade earth-level martial skill, although Azure Dragon Claw was similar martial skill, but while casting it, it was very overbearing. On the other hand, although the profound aura finger was also a type of fast-attacking martial skill, but while casting it, it was very mild, and it could be used for surprise attacks. When Chen Xiang returned to the martial courtyard, he saw Zhang De and Yun Xiaodao's faces br. 1. G with happiness, and from this he knew they have definitely been taken by a good teacher. Elder brother Chen, you came at the right time, otherwise later on it would have been very difficult to see old man Zhang. Yun Xiaodao said. Oh? Why? Chen Xiang had a doubtful expression on his face. Zhang De smilingly said, My teacher is at the extreme martial province border all year round, that's why I've decided to follow him, so that I can also experience this world, and can somewhat sharpen myself. This is also not bad, take care. Chen Xiang slightly smiled. Zhang De left, and Yun Xiaodao said with a smile, Elder brother Chen, do you want to know who my teacher is? Who? Don't tell me it's Elder Dan. Chen Xiang said while laughing. Of course not, it's an old matron of 3rd Martial Courtyard. She and our family have some relations, that's why she has taken me as an apprentice, but while I was doing the A.S. assessment, I was very badly tortured by her, and she also took away my Black Hawk, said Yun Xiaodao with a depressed look. A person from the 3rd Martial Courtyard. They could be considered as the powerful experts in the extreme martial sect, and this made Chen Xiang quite surprised. Elder brother Chen, you do not have a teacher. Aren't you dispirited because of it? Yun Xiaodao asked in a low tone. Chen Xiang laughed and said, Xiaodao, you better cultivate seriously, otherwise you'll be completely left behind by me. I was able to grow up to this step alone, so who wants a teacher? Xiaodao, you took a teacher, yet you also haven't asked us to go for drinks and meals? You are very cunning. Zhu Rong was coming with a smile on his face. Since he knew Chen Xiang was an alchemist and also had a lot of resources, he would come here every day. Chen Xiang also had 700 true Qi Dan, so he could be absolutely considered as wealthy in the inner sect. Dead fatty, you only know how to take advantage of me. I've known you for so long, and you've never invited me. Yun Xiaodao cursed. Who says? The last time we went out, I invited you to eat a bowl of noodles. Zhu Rong immediately retorted, and he also had an aggrieved look on his face. Invited my ass, that bowl counted as fart. Fizz. I plussing for half a day and I did not even find meat scr. P.S. Yun Xiaodao walked towards him and kicked his foot. Zhu Rong snappily said, "It can be considered as being invited. You were the first person who was ever invited by me, Zhu Rong." Right, Chun Xiang, there is the alchemy compet. 1. Tian being held in the extreme Dan courtyard, do you want to go? The reward is 2 true elemental Dan. What are the compet? 1. Tian rules like? Chun Xiang was excited in his heart and quickly asked. What about it? It is just like before. Within a specified time, whoever can refine as many true Qi Dan with better quality will win. Zhu Rong rubbed his fatty palm together and said with smile. Chun Xiang slightly raised his mouth. His face was briming with a confident smile and immediately said, I'll definitely go. Finished talking, he quickly walked out of the martial courtyard and started walking towards the extreme Dan courtyard. These days he also learned about the extreme Dan courtyard's location. A part of it was close to the mysterious realm, and a part of it was inside the mysterious realm. Chun Xiang came to the 8 courtyards of the extreme Dan courtyard, and to their surprise, they ran into Yao Haixing. How is it you again? What are you doing here? Yao Haixing was, to their surprise, in charge of the registration work here, because of how he treated Chun Xiang last time and how things also went too far, so he was no longer responsible for the outside work. Enemies often crossed each other's path, and Chun Xiang did not expect to encounter Yao Haixing, but he had heard Yao Haixing was a level 3 alchemist. He could refine middle-grade spirit level Dan, so he still had quite a bit of prestige in the extreme martial sect. No wonder his manners were like that on that day. Yao Haixing became extremely furious when he saw Chun Xiang. Now Yao Haixing was also paying Chun Xiang's fees to enter the extreme martial sect. Not to mention, Yao Haixing's apprentice was seriously injured by Chun Xiang. Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong also hadn't expected that Chun Xiang would encounter his number 2 enemy in the extreme martial sect. Relying on you? Can you even refine a true Qi Dan? If you fail in refining, you have to pay the cost of the herbs with your own crystal stones, and if you continue to fail 3 times, then you will be automatically withdrawn. Yao Haixing spoke disdainfully. Just a moment ago, Chun Xiang learned from Zhu Rong that during this alchemy compet, 1. Tian the materials were all given by the extreme martial sect and one had 10 days for refining. This was mainly done so that the large amount of true Qi Dan herbs which had been collected for too long could be consumed. This way, not only could the sect quickly obtain a large number of true Qi Dan, but also it could allow the sect's alchemists to learn from each other, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Of course I can. Chun Xiang's brow slightly wrinkled. At this time Yun Xiaodao shouted, not only can elder brother Chen do so, but he will also get first place, thereby winning the 2 true elemental Dan. I spit. Yao Haixing burst out into laughter. If this brat, who smells of his mother's milk which has not yet dried, can win first place, then what will us old men who have been staying in the extreme Dan courtyard for many years feel then? If he can win first place, then this father will take him as a teacher. Chun Xiang, thinking about this in his heart, chuckled, as if he could see in front of him what this crazy smiling middle-aged man taking him as a teacher looked like. Many people in the extreme Dan courtyard casted a contemptuous gaze. No matter how talented Chun Xiang was, he was still 17 years old, and at this age if he could refine a high-grade mortal level Dan, then it could be considered good. However, to refine a low-grade spirit level true Qi Dan, he still fell short by a lot. After all, everyone who could refine the true Qi Dan knew that only after failing more than 100 times could one be successfully able to refine a true Qi Dan, and they believed Chun Xiang absolutely could not afford to consume such a large number of herbs. Suddenly, one cold voice resounded, if Chun Xiang can win first, I'll make an exception and allow him to enter the Extreme Dan King courtyard. TLN. Yao Haixing appeared in Chapter 76. Chapter 94 Alchemy Compet. I.Tian. Chapter 94 Alchemy Compet. 1. Tian. This was the sound of Elder Dan's voice, and Chen Xiang would never forget this even in his death. Her words made everybody in the 8th Dan courtyard shudder. The Extreme Dan courtyard consisted of 8 smaller courtyards, and above these was the Extreme Dan King courtyard. Only Elder Dan had the qualifications to enter this courtyard. If you cannot win, then you will give all the original benefits you would receive from the Extreme Martial Sect over to Yao Haixing. How about it? Elder Dan said with a sneer. Chen Xiang lightly smiled in response. All right, if I can get first, not only will I get to visit a nice place, but also receive an apprentice. You can never win. I earned first place for the last 5 consecutive years. You still have a long way to go. Yao Haixing coldly smiled, and it was as if he was foreseeing Chen Xiang's miserable defeat. The matter of Elder Dan making things difficult for Chen Xiang was known to everyone in the Extreme Martial Sect. But now that Chen Xiang had entered the inner sect and received abundant resources, Elder Dan actually tried to cut these supplies off. Body expected that Chen Xiang would actually readily agree to such a thing. Youths are always like this, they can never admit defeat. Someday they will suffer and pay the price. Wu Keiming, after learning of this bet, could not help but lament. I say, Elder Dan, this brat clearly intended to please you by openly gifting 2 azure profound fruits. Why would you still act against him? Humph. Elder Dan coldly snorted and said, this brat has not suffered any losses by his supposed gift. When I refine the foundation building, Dan, I need to expend other additional materials for refining. His azure profound fruit was the rarest on the list, which I had been looking for quite a long time to obtain. But I failed to find it and could only resign myself to accept this gift. If he really wanted to please me, he would not have requested me to refine 2 foundation building dawn for his pair of little sweethearts. When Wu Keiming heard this, and he really thought about it once more, and he realized that regarding this matter, Elder Dan had indeed suffered a loss. I will definitely make him willingly bow his head towards me. If he admits his mistakes to me and apologizes, I can even take him as my apprentice. After Elder Dan finished speaking, she flew away. I'm afraid that this feisty girl will never get married. Wu Keiming helplessly smiled. The Alchemy Compet. 1. Tian would start after 3 days and was held in the 8th smaller Dan courtyard. During these 3 days Chen Xiang secluded himself and went into closed-door training. Others thought that he was preparing for the compet. 1. Tian, but they were very wrong. He was studying the spirit veins section in the refining weapon scroll. Sister Meiyao, Sister Yuyu, regarding these types of spirit veins you too should understand better than I. These things are very profound and can produce all sorts of bizarre effects. What do you think would happen if I engrave these spirit veins onto a Dan, or during alchemy internally carve the spirit veins? Inside the ring, Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu were stunned speechless. They had never thought about such a thing. In their opinion, alchemy was just the process of congealing the Dan by fusing various types of herbs, nothing more, nothing less. After Su Meiyao took a cold breath, she said, I do not know, but you should try. But in order to do so, you would need a very strong divine sense in order to quickly carve the spirit veins while congealing the Dan. You would need an even more powerful divine sense if you want to carve it inside the Dan. Correct? Furthermore, you would need to carve suitable spirit veins. My teacher once said that there were some spirit runes which had the same effects as dawn in ancient times. If such spirit runes were to be engraved onto the dantian, it would allow one to quickly gather a large amount of true qi. If it was attached onto someone's arm, that part would gain fearsome strength. Bai Yuyu said. Chen Xiang was secretly elated by the news. If he was truly successful in creating spirit runes onto dawn, It would help him improve the effect of dawn by several times in the future without having to use precious spirit herbs. However, he currently had too little understanding of the spirit runes. 3 days passed, but Chen Xiang was left without anything to show for it. These spirit runes were just too complicated and required a huge amount of mental power to memorize and grasp the information contained within them, which was simply impossible to do in such a short period of time. This alchemy compet 1. Tian was just a small-scale event held once a year. However, a large grand compet 1. Tian was held every 10 years. At that time, not only would all the alchemists in the extreme martial sect partake 1. P8, but also alchemists throughout the entire extreme martial province would travel here to partake 1. P8 in this major event. Many people were uninterested in watching the process of an alchemy compet 1. Tian because it was relatively tedious. Unless it was a grand compet 1. Tian, in that case the scene was not only spectacular but also lively. Furthermore, occasionally there were some funny scenes that occurred. Elder brother Chen, you can do it. We will be waiting for you here 10 days later. This time around Yun Xiaodao was concerned about Chen Xiang because of the giant bet. Although he said he would definitely win the compet 1. Tian, if he lost, he would be losing big time. Elder Dan arrived and coldly stated, Chen Xiang, your alchemy process will be supervised by me. I heard that you had won 1,000 true Qi Dan, and this is to prevent you from cheating, which is probably the only way you can win. Chen Xiang helplessly sighed, Elder Dan, there are only 700 of those true Qi Dan remaining. I gave 100 to Yun Xiaodao and sold 200 to Zhu Rong and Zhang De. Here, I'll give you the remaining 700 true Qi Dan for custody, so you cannot accuse me of cheating. Chen Xiang readily said over the 7 boxes, which made Elder Dan surprised. When others found out that Chen Xiang had 700 true Qi Dan on him, they could not help but stare at him with envy. Yet despite this, they did not dare to even think of fighting Chen Xiang. Even though there was a great disparity in their strength, if the extreme martial sect were to find out about their actions, their peaceful days would come to an end. Elder Dan opened the jade boxes and confirmed there was 700 true Qi Dan inside them. Afterwards, she placed them inside her own storage bracelet. Only at the elder level would one have such a sophisticated and beautiful storage equipment. Elder Dan also wanted to take a look at how Chen Xiang planned to refine the true Qi Dan in the end. She also did not believe that Chen Xiang would be able to refine them at his young age. The compet 1. Tian started as each person got their own personal room, which was in turn guarded by a disciple. Moreover, their entire alchemy process were being transmitted to the elder courtyard, which was being intensely supervised by a few old men so that no one could win by cheating. Chen Xiang learned that the fastest someone had refined a set of true Qi Dan was half an hour. However, if he used the brilliant flame dragon furnace, he would be able to refine 2 sets of true Qi Dan herbs in half an hour. In order to make it less shocking, he intended to tone it down and refine 1 set of herbs per hour, plus like this he was able to be more relaxed. Elder Dan opened Chen Xiang's brilliant flame dragon furnace, and apart from being very beautiful and forged by good material, she did not find anything strange about it. The only person who should know about its uses was the brilliant furnace's chosen master, otherwise Meng Bo would have never casually taken out this alchemy furnace and used it as gambling stakes. Elder Dan, how long does it generally take you to refine 1 set of true Qi Dan herbs? Also, how many Dan can you produce in 1 set? Chen Xiang asked. The fastest I can refine would be 2 sets of herbs in 1.5 hours. The highest amount of Dan in the furnace would be 6 Dan, but then the time of refining would be extended. Elder Dan truthfully answered. She was also relatively proud of these results. At her level, alchemists were not always refining high-level Dan. Sometimes the sect lacked low-level Dan, and they needed to act as well. When refining high-level dawn, they would go into seclusion. Elder Dan had not gone into seclusion for many years because she had been collecting herbs. The herbs used in this compet. 1. Tie-in was paid for by the extreme martial sect, but if they failed to refine anything they needed to repay the sect with crystal stones. That was why everyone was being even more careful than usual when refining. They did not dare to refine too quickly because they fear its repercussions, but Chun Xiang had the heaven-defying brilliant flame dragon furnace. If he intended to go fast, he would go fast. If he wanted to approach the limit of his refinement speed, he would be able to refine 3 sets of true Qi Dan herbs in half an hour. Elder Dan saw Chun Xiang skillfully dealing with the herbs without even taking a glance at them, while at the same time processing multiple sets at once. The amount for each set was uniform and not the least bit off or different. His speed was so quick that it made people suck their tongues. Only people who had vast amounts of experience in refining would be able to do such a thing. Even inside the extreme martial sect, only a few old men could do this. Chapter 0095, Compet.I. Tie-in Result. Chapter 0095 Compet. 1. Tie-in Result. You've refined true Qi Dan previously? Elder Dan asked while feeling surprised. Of course, I didn't come here to play, Chun Xiang casually said, and in blink of an eye, he already finished processing several sets of materials, and started to place the herbs inside the brilliant flame dragon furnace. The significantly masked beautiful face of Elder Dan was full of shock. 17 years old, and already capable of refining a low-grade spirit-level Dan. This came a shock to her, and also she felt that she had finally met someone since her birth that she could truly consider a genius. It was also the first time she had heard of a genius of this level. Elder Dan was silent and seriously looking at Chun Xiang refining, but the next scene made her vomit blood. Chun Xiang, while actually refining, was also diverting his attention to organize the herbs. You have already refined this, Dan? Elder Dan could sense the flame ting inside the brilliant flame dragon furnace. The flame would suddenly become large, then suddenly small, and these subtle changes were very difficult to detect. She almost wasn't able to sense these subtle changes, and it could be clearly seen that Chun Xiang's ability to control fire was just superb. Chun Xiang unenthusiastically said, "Alchemy is too boring and consumes a lot of time. Only this way it can be a little interesting. Don't you fear that your furnace will explode? Diverting the mind in 2 places like this can easily lead to failure." Elder Dan snorted. Hey, I'm currently using my mind in 3 places. One side for refining the Dan, another side on organizing the herbs, and also talking to you, Chun Xiang said while laughing, and listening to this Elder Dan could not wait to give him a beating, but she also clearly knew while refining dawn how tedious and boring it could be. Chun Xiang slowed down his tempo, and he could only use the brilliant flame dragon furnace like this if he was familiar with the process of refining the Dan. He could divert his mind to several places, and this was not only due to the brilliant flame dragon furnace, but also because he mainly relied on his subtle sense of alchemy. This sense was his talent, otherwise, he would never be able to learn alchemy so easily. All the materials were with Elder Dan, and she first gave Chun Xiang only 10 sets, waiting for him to completely refine them, but Chun Xiang had quickly organized them. In this little private room 10 square boxes were placed on the ground, which were the herbs for refining the true Qi Dan. Elder Dan, at my age, if I enter the extreme Dan King courtyard, then what are the advantages? Like what will I receive? Chun Xiang asked, and thinking that he could live together with the mysterious Elder Dan for 10 days or so in his heart, he was inexplicably excited. If you really can enter, then it certainly will be beneficial, but it would also depend on me because the extreme Dan courtyard is managed by me. Elder Dan said with a low chuckle. Elder Dan, how about I give you a little L spirit GRAS, and we forget past matters and start anew. How does that sound? After Elder Dan's mysterious hatred, Chen Xiang did not have good days. We never had any hatred between us. I am just doing this due to my preferences, Elder Dan said. Chen Xiang sighed and said, I will use the L spirit GR S for one answer, and you tell me why you hate me. As you previously said, as long as I win, you'll tell me, but I cannot wait for that time. Although the L spirit GR S is very precious, but for me it not rare, Elder Dan said with a cold snort. Why are you doing this? Chen Xiang had no words. He suddenly felt Elder Dan was angry with him, and this is simple like a mentality of a little girl. He had once suspected whether or not he was a lookalike of an enemy of Elder Dan, and that was why she was hating him like this. Admit your mistake to me and yield to me. If you do so, then I'll be satisfied, and perhaps I can even receive you as my apprentice. In Elder Dan's voice there was some pride in it, and she felt soon she would see this stubborn youth be shrewdly under her skirt. Dream on. Even in death I'll not. After this, Chen Xiang didn't pay any attention to Elder Dan, and only felt somewhat strange because Elder Dan was obviously doing this in a fit of anger which was simply like the mentality of a little girl. More than an hour passed by. Chen Xiang opened the alchemy furnace, and took out 6 purple dawn and put it in a jade box, then once again placed the herbs inside the brilliant flame dragon furnace, continuing to refine more true qi dawn. His actions were very casual, and looked similar to how roadside steam bun sellers steamed their buns. However, Elder Dan, who watched this, was very surprised, because Chen Xiang was truly able to refine true qi dawn. Moreover, it only took him 1 hour for refine 1 set of herbs, and using 1 set he was able to refine 6 dawn. Only if refined out gingerly, so that no herbs would be wasted while refining, would one be able to congeal 6 dawn. This would also take some time and also consumed a lot of one's spirit. But Chen Xiang did this so leisurely. Elder Dan remained silent, and watching Chen Xiang's casual appearance, in her heart she was not too happy. After watching this refinement of 1 set of herbs by Chen Xiang, she was clear that the ultimate winner was likely to be Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang did not pay any attention to Elder Dan, and even when Elder Dan asked him, he only casually responded with a few words. It seemed he was angry, and this made Elder Dan secretly clench her teeth. More than 1 hour later and another set of herbs were refined out once again. Chen Xiang, for the entire day and night, did not rest and kept on refining true qi dawn. 1 day later, Chen Xiang had refined out 11 set of herbs. This speed made Elder Dan speechless due to surprise, and Chen Xiang did not even fail once. In the eyes of Chen Xiang, refining true qi dawn now was like making rice BAL. But among the low-grade spirit-level dawn, he only knew how to refine the true qi dawn. The other dawn required a lot of herbs, and currently he didn't have a lot of crystal stones, so he could not afford the consumption of herbs. 10 days soon went by and Chen Xiang refined a total of 100 set of herbs, in which he also rested for some time, which came to a grand total of 600 true qi dawn. This alchemy speed in the entire extreme martial province was definitely first, and if Chen Xiang was willing to help some family to refine true qi dawn, he would definitely earn a lot of crystal stones very quickly. At the end of the compet, 1. Tian, Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong both quickly arrived, and they saw Chen Xiang had a relaxed expression. In their hearts they felt a little strange, as in their opinion, Chen Xiang should not be able to win. Brother Yao, you really made this old man not be able to hold a candle against you. In 10 days you actually refined out 400 true qi dawn. More than 50 last year, so this year the first place position should belong to you. One old man with a look of respect was looking at Yao Haixing. Yao Haixing's face was filled with pride, but he modestly smiled and said, "Ha ha, this is all due to luck. Besides, I and that brat, who doesn't know immensity of heaven and earth, Had a bet, so I did everything I can do in order to win. Yao Haixing, previously you said as long as you lost to me, you will be my apprentice. Do these words still count? Chen Xiang walked over and smiled. Of course it counts, you speak as if you have beaten me. Yu Haixing laughingly said, if this is true, this is the funniest joke I've heard of. Even if you can continuously refine 10 days, that also makes me a little surprised. This time others one after another revealed how many true Qi Dan they each refined, and except for Yao Haixing, the maximum others refined was about 200 or so, while the minimum was 30 Dan. Not many people had partook. 1. P. Aided, only about 30 people, and each of them were relatively good alchemists inside the extreme Dan courtyard. Yao Haixing and other alchemists all laughed at Chen Xiang, but Elder Dan's words in the next moment made their smile freeze. Yao Haixing, you lost. This brat refined 600 true Qi Dan. Elder Dan said, and in her voice there was a trace of hatred, because it was not the result she wanted to see. Chapter 96 Receiving an Apprentice. Chapter 96 Receiving an Apprentice. Hey, Elder Dan, you are very kind. I thought that you were intentionally and superficially making things difficult for me. Chen Xiang let loose a deep breath and afterwards took out 6 jade boxes, each one containing 100 true Qi Dan. The courtyard became deathly silent, and body could believe that Chen Xiang was actually able to refine 600 true Qi Dan in just 10 days. Everyone had a look of suspicion in their eyes while looking at Elder Dan. For an instant, they suspected that Elder Dan had helped Chen Xiang cheat, but then remembered that was completely impossible because of how much Elder Dan hated Chen Xiang. At this time, Elder Dan had 7 jade boxes in her hand. These were the true Qi Dan she had previously confiscated. Afterwards, she opened all the boxes, and verified the contents, showing everyone there was no cheating involved. Although I didn't want to see this result, Chen Xiang has indeed refined out 600 true Qi Dan within 10 days. He also only spent a total of 100 sets of materials. Elder Dan's words made everyone once again shudder. Only 100 set of materials. This meant that Chen Xiang was able to refine out 6 Dan every single time with only a single set of herbs. Abnormal freak. Zhu Rong spat out these words from his mouth. Yun Xiaodao's mouth actually started twitching. He had not expected to have such a heaven-defying friend this close to him. Yao Haixing's teeth was trembling. With wide open eyes, he was staring at the true Qi Dan placed on the ground. As long as they were an alchemist, it was clear that these Dan had been refined not too long ago. In addition, with the heat emanating from a box, it was clear that the Dan in that specific box had been refined 2 days ago. Yao Haixing and the other alchemists could clearly determine that the true Qi Dan in the 6 boxes from Chen Xiang had been refined not too long ago. Moreover, they were all of very high quality. No, all of them were top-grade quality. Elder Dan coldly said, "Now do you believe me? I have to admit, this fellow's level of alchemy is very high. Even I cannot accomplish such a feat. Each and every one of his true Qi Dan is top-grade quality. It was also refined out in such a short time, with each set of herbs producing 6 Dan." Yao Haixing suddenly shuddered. His eyes had turned red and his heart felt literally dead. However, towards Chen Xiang he had now had nothing but admiration. What could he do when even Elder Dan had admitted defeat? At the very next instant, Yao Haixing knelt down and knocked his head down towards Chen Xiang, thunderously shouting, "Teacher, please accept this disciple's salute." Seeing such a salute from Yao Haixing, many alchemists almost waddled. They very eagerly gave themselves 2 slaps, wanting to check whether or not they were dreaming. An alchemist of the true martial realm had just taken a teacher who was in the 9th level of the mortal martial realm. Furthermore, he was a youth. This was simply a joke, the extreme martial sect's biggest and most ridiculous joke. Chen Xiang was also startled. He had not expected Yao Haixing to so readily take him as a teacher. This was due in part to the presence of Elder Dan and the other alchemists. Yao Haixing could not afford to lose the trust of others. He might get cursed behind his back, and for him that was worse than death. Yun Xiaodao vigorously pinched Zhu Rong's fat hand, making him emit a horrible shriek. Ha ha! It's not a dream. Elder Brother Chen has won. Yun Xiaodao burst into laughter. Zhu Rong also took a deep breath before accepting this absurd reality. Hey hey, apprentice, please rise, Chen Xiang said with a depraved laugh as he walked towards Yao Haixing and helped him stand up. At this point in time, Yao Haixing's sadness was difficult to describe. He had not expected that he would ever take the one person he hated the most as his teacher. This might make him be unable to ever raise his head high ever again. This is my gift to you, Chen Xiang said as he gave Yao Haixing 100 true qi dan and an azure profound fruit. This gift of his made everyone petrified. Their gazes instantly gathered onto the azure profound fruit. Almost everyone here was an alchemist, who in the world would be unable to recognize the azure profound fruit, this precious and extremely rare spirit herb? Little gift? The azure profound fruit as a little gift? This was simple too huge a blow for them. Both of Yao Haixing's hands were trembling as he took the so-called little gift from Chen Xiang. He was originally deeply sad, however he felt much better now. At least doing this little obeisance to Chen Xiang as his teacher was not all that bad. He was no fool and knew that Chen Xiang intended to resolve the conflict between them. Thanks a lot, teacher, said Yao Haixing somewhat choppily. Chen Xiang, here is your first reward. Early morning tomorrow report to the Extreme Dan King courtyard. If you are late, wait and accept the punishment. Elder Dan threw a small jaded box to Chen Xiang before going to the other alchemists, who took out their respective refined true qi dan. Elder Dan, can I choose to not enter the Extreme Dan King courtyard? Chen Xiang was worried that he would be oppressed there by this mysterious Elder Dan, turning his life miserable. That won't do. It was an agreed bet between you and me. If you refuse and violate this, then you will have to leave the extreme martial sect. A cold snort from Elder Dan resounded. Chen Xiang sighed bitterly. He suddenly felt that he did not gain any benefits from the bet between him and Elder Dan Haixing. Although I am now your teacher, at best I can only refine true qi dan. Maybe later I will even have to ask some advice from you. There is no need to refer to me as your teacher, instead just simply call me by my name. I will wait for the day when you are sincerely convinced I have the qualifications for you to call me teacher. At that time, you can once again address me as such, Chen Xiang said. Having Yao Haixing call him teacher every day, even Chen Xiang felt a little sorry. Not to mention what Yao Haixing was probably feeling. Regarding this point, Yao Haixing was also quite grateful. He knew from now on he could not act against Chen Xiang, otherwise he would be severely punished. Long before Chen Xiang entered the inner sect, his fame had spread throughout the entire extreme martial sect. Now, not only did he win the alchemy compet, one Tian, but he was also allowed to enter the Extreme Dan King courtyard, making Chen Xiang even more famous. Chen Xiang and Yun Xiaodao returned to their martial courtyard. While they were walking on the road, Yun Xiaodao suddenly said with a smile, Elder Brother Chen, do you remember not too long ago how I spoke about having a few very nice sisters? Chen Xiang nodded. I do, but you also said they would despise me and treat me like dirt. How could I even say such a thing seriously? It was just a joke. Either way, I'll arrange for you and them to meet face to face. You're still single, you can simply get married, Yun Xiaodao said with a depraved smile on his face. That way, he would be able to get a brother-in-law with boundless prospects, which was a very good thing. TCH, my fiancée is Xue Xianxian. If these sisters of yours want to marry me, they would first have to get permission from her. Chen Xiang pursed his lips and said. Currently he just wanted to quickly enter the true martial realm and go searching for Xue Xianxian. Brother-in-law, come on. Although my sisters are not nearly as talented as Shui Xianxian, they are all really pretty. To Chen Xiang's surprise, Yun Xiaodao actually called him brother-in-law already. Zhu Rong, witnessing this, could not help but stop himself and give Yun Xiaodao a nice kick. Although your sisters really are rather pretty, at the same time each and every one of them are brimming with pride and arrogance. There is no way Brother Chen would like them. Younger brother Chen, I also have a sister, and her talent is also not bad. Her appearance is also much better than this rascal's sister's, those prudish tarts. Zhu Rong's chubby face was filled to the brim with a smile. My dear brother-in-law, at what time do you want to go for a stroll within our Zhu family? Dead pig, you and I must fight, Yun Xiaodao angrily said. Watching this dramatic play from Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong, Chen Xiang secretly thought that it would be great to never meet these younger and elder sisters of theirs. Especially Zhu Rong's. Maybe his sister would be like him and be a heavyweight level female. Chapter 97 Heavenly Dragon Treasure. Chapter 97 Heavenly Dragon Treasure. Chen Xiang's attitude became very resolute. His refusal to Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong was akin to a solid war fortress regarding their meetings with their younger and elder female relatives. Barely before the dawn of the next day, Chen Xiang hastily entered the mysterious realm. Though he knew that the extreme Dan King courtyard was inside, but he did not know the path to it. Well, you came quite early. Come with me, Wu Keiming said with a happy smile. Regarding Chen Xiang, Wu Keiming was very interested. Originally, Elder Dan had forbidden anyone to receive Chen Xiang as their apprentice, but now not only did he get himself a true martial realm apprentice, he also obtained the permission to enter the extreme Dan King courtyard. Chen Xiang did not know what it meant to enter the extreme Dan King courtyard, but Wu Keiming knew very well what it meant. The extreme Dan King courtyard had the simple appearance of a very ordinary house. Above the entrance was, Extreme Dan King Courtyard. Only these 4 characters and nothing else out of the ordinary. Elder Wu, in the end, just what kind of place is the Extreme Dan King Courtyard? Chen Xiang asked. Hey, you will know once you go inside. I will take my leave now, take care. Wu Keiming's smile was very mysterious. Seeing this, Chen Xiang had a bad premonition for the near future. The spirit qi inside the mysterious realm was very rich. Chen Xiang felt that if he stayed here for a bit, he would definitely be able to cultivate a large amount of true qi. But no matter how much faster this process was, it was still incomparable to the speed when he cultivated using pills. You came quite early. Were you brought in by Elder Wu? The sound of Elder Dan's voice came from close by. Chen Xiang walked towards the sound and replied, Yes. What exactly do you want me to do here in the Extreme Dan King courtyard? I'm the only person who stays here in the Extreme Dan King courtyard. Now you will also stay here. Elder Dan responded. Her tone was extremely serious. Why? Chen Xiang was very shocked in his heart. He was going to stay here every day alone with her. This would definitely not be a good thing. I'm preparing to go behind closed doors for quite some time in order to refine Dawn. You will call all the shots here in the Extreme Dan King courtyard and essentially become its master. Elder Dan replied, You do not have to do much here. After all, there are already specialists who are responsible for planting the spirit herbs. Regarding all the other matters, they are also managed by someone. The only important thing you need to do is maintain the dignity of the Extreme Dan King courtyard. As to how this goes, you will naturally understand later. Chen Xiang was dazed for a brief second. He had never expected Elder Dan to trust him with such an important matter. Considering her words, Elder Dan probably did not hate him that much. Was it all due to something I've done? Or did she do it all in a fit of anger? Chen Xiang arrived at a somewhat funny conclusion. Chen Xiang sucked in a mouthful of air and asked, Elder Dan, about those foundation building, Dawn. How much time did you think it would take? I have already refined it and sent it to the divine weapon Heavenly Empire and Icewind Valley. Elder Dan's tone was somewhat angry when she replied. She had not expected Chen Xiang to actually still be worried about this issue. Chen Xiang nodded his head in reply and said with a smile, "Then thanks a lot, Elder Dan. You can rest assured and head behind closed doors to refine dawn." Chen Xiang, I'll ask you once again. Are you willing to take me as your teacher? You should know that I have never received an apprentice. Elder Dan asked. A sliver of gentleness could be found in her voice. Chen Xiang shook his head. No, besides, haven't you already stated that you would make life difficult for anyone who received me as an apprentice? If you were to take me as your apprentice, would you not have to make life difficult for yourself? Humph, as you Wisconsin H. Plus, Elder Dan took out a jade card and hurled it towards Chen Xiang before storming away. Chen Xiang caught the jade card and carefully looked at it. Above the card, there were actually hair-like patterns which he recognized as spirit veins. Furthermore, there was also a trace of an unknown power. Above this jade card, a set of words were written, Extreme Dan King Courtyard, Chen Xiang. From then on, Chen Xiang was the only one living inside the Extreme Dan King Courtyard, but he also had a large amount of freedom. Ever since he received Yao Haixing as his apprentice, Yao Haixing rarely appeared. He claimed it was because he needed to go into seclusion for alchemy. In reality, he was just trying to escape because he did not have the face to see others since he had taken Chen Xiang as his teacher. Chen Xiang and Yun Xiaodao rarely went to visit the 329th Martial Courtyard, but they were still members of this Martial Courtyard. What made them a bit surprised was that Zhu Rong actually gave up the lucrative benefits of the 200th Martial Courtyard and went to live with Chen Xiang and the others. His reason for doing so was to better persuade Chen Xiang to meet his sister. In this way, Chen Xiang and Yun Xiaodao, along with Zhu Rong, this stingy fatty, became friends. Though they often cursed at each other, they had very good brotherly feelings towards each other. Elder brother Chen, we've been waiting for you for quite some time. Yun Xiaodao, upon seeing Chen Xiang walk into the martial courtyard, hastily jumped up. Because Chen Xiang now resided in the Extreme Dan King Courtyard inside the mysterious realm, Zhu Rong and Yun Xiaodao did not have the liberty to enter it. Although they had something to discuss with Chen Xiang, they could not look for him. What is it? Chen Xiang asked. Zhu Rong was waving a sheet in his hand and helplessly said, Yes, well, due to the careful selection of this little rascal Yun, we received a very boring and nonsensical task. Chen Xiang now remembered that it has already been 1 month since he entered the inner sect, and they needed to perform a task arranged by the sect. In this 1 month, he had learned some new martial skills along with the water-attributed Black Tortoise Divine exercise. While the majority of these were more defensive-oriented martial skills, and there was only 1 or 2 different types, it had made Chen Xiang very satisfied with his progress. Chen Xiang was just thinking about asking about the task at hand when Yun Xiaodao laughed and said, This is one very good task, it's about the matter of the Heavenly Dragon Treasure. Heavenly Dragon Treasure. It was one of the most recent matters that caused major uproar these past 10 days. This was a treasure from the ancient times. A dragon had fell on the Qinwu mainland and left it, and along with it appeared the emergence of rumors about a map regarding the Heavenly Dragon Treasure. But this map was also very expensive, and was around 100,000 crystal stones for a copy. At first the majority of people thought it was fake, and someone only put forth this false information to earn some crystal stones. But after detailed analysis by some elders, the place marked as the treasure was indeed the location where the dragon inside the legend had once appeared. That place was called Paris. Hi+ing Dragon Mountains, and could be regarded as a dangerous area. How can there be any heavenly dragon treasures? When the rumor had not even appeared, our Zhu family searched the place thoroughly, and it didn't have farts. Zhu Rong contemptuously said. Humph, My Yun family had already searched over 100 years before your Zhu family ever went to search. Yun Xiaodao said. Paris. Hi plus ing Dragon Mountains containing a mystical treasure. This was a legend from long ago. Many people had gone to search for it, but no one found anything. Chen Xiang took the paper from Yun Xiaodao and looked at the map. As well as the details from the extreme martial sect's explanation of the task, they were responsible for investigating whether or not it was true, and for reporting any further information before the task could be considered finished. Although it may be a rumor, it is also a very easy thing to do. We can almost treat it as playing around. However, I heard that many individuals from major sects have also arrived to search for it. Not only it has caused commotion in the extreme martial province, but it is same for all the other provinces. There truly are many idiots, so many have come Russ. Hi plus ing here from afar. Zhu Rong laughed. Come on, so many people are heading over here, so there is a high chance that it might be true. Previously, your family had not found anything there. Maybe it was because there was a mysterious realm there. You also know about mysterious realms, right? The ways any mysterious realm appeared were extremely special. Sometimes it suddenly appeared out of nowhere, other times someone needed to fulfill certain conditions for an entrance to appear. There were also some cases where a very strong power was needed to forcefully rip open the Pa-S Sage. Chapter 98 Peerless Martial Sect. Chapter 98 Peerless Martial Sect. Just when Chen Xiang was determined to go, an old woman who was wearing an ordinary dress suddenly appeared. Xiaodao, due to some matters within your family, you need to take a trip back. This woman was Yun Xiaodao's teacher, a martial artist of the true martial realm. Yun Xiaodao had a look of reluctance. If it wasn't for the strength of this old woman, he would definitely not go back. However, he now had to clench his teeth and leave with the old woman. Elder brother Chen, this time I'll have to request you to help out. Next time I'll help you with your task. This was the statement Yun Xiaodao left behind. Younger brother Chen, as you find it very interesting, you can go by yourself. I do not intend to join in on the fun and also request you to do so. The instant Zhu Rong finished speaking, he left before Chen Xiang could even blink. He did not expect this fatty's speed to be so quick. Chen Xiang let out a snort before folding the map and leaving the extreme martial sect. The extreme martial sect's A.S. sign tasks were generally completed by several disciples of a martial courtyard. However, regardless of how many people go, it was all fine as long as the matter was resolved. Hi plus ing Dragon Mountain was located at one of the border areas of the extreme martial province. It was relatively close to the borders of the Beast Martial Province, which was the site of the Beast Martial sect. In this province, there were relatively more demon beasts. However, the majority of these were being raised by the disciples of the Beast Martial sect in a cage as pet. The martial skills they learned and practiced were also invariably connected with the demon beast. The road Chen Xiang needed to take was very far, but he sped things up by using the vermilion bird fire wings to fly at night, and this allowed him to quickly cross many mountain forests. 10 days passed by as Chen Xiang made a long and wearisome journey before finally arriving at Guanlong City. From here, the distance to the Paris Hi plus ing Dragon Mountains was not that far. Recently many people had gathered here. After Chen Xiang asked around, he came to know why so many people believed in the legendary heavenly dragon treasure. This was because 1 month ago, many people in Guanlong City saw a strange and unique aura appear in the direction of the Paris Hi plus ing Dragon Mountains, which was followed by a dragon's roar coming from the horizon. This kind of thing was very likely to be the sign of the opening of a mysterious realm. After coming here, Chen Xiang also learned some extreme martial sect-related information. A martial arts sect, called the Peerless Martial Sect, had been incorporated and fused with the extreme martial sect along with all of their disciples. The Peerless Martial Sect was another first CLA. sect and was ranked just behind the Chenwu mainland's 8 major righteous sects. It could also be considered as one of the strongest rising stars and had been established at the coastal areas of the extreme martial province. Unfortunately, the entire peerless martial sect had been swallowed up by the sea and suffered very heavy losses. In order to continue the development of their disciples, the peerless martial sects seeked the majority of the disciples' agreement before incorporating themselves into the extreme martial sect. The peerless martial sects originally had some relations with the extreme martial sect, and their marital skills had actually stemmed from them. Since it had accepted the help of the extreme martial sect, being incorporated into the larger sect was not a bad thing for them and could even be considered a joyful mother. You see, Kerr, just what kind of S.H.I. plus T2I task did this father come here to complete? The extreme martial sect is actually holding a large-scale banquet here for the peerless martial sect and giving them a large welcoming dinner. Chen Xiang, thinking about this, secretly cursed in his heart. As for the extreme martial sect's disciples, it was also a joyful matter. This was because in the entirety of the peerless martial sect's disciples there was a good number of female disciples. The extreme martial sect had modified their sect rules and were now willing to take female disciples, so that the peerless martial sect could be comfortably integrated into the extreme martial sect. Chen Xiang also thought that the inner martial courtyard would no longer have a lifeless appearance now. If it was not for the arrival of Zhu Rong, then the inner martial courtyard Chen Xiang was staying in would only have 2 disciples. Chen Xiang had spent a few days in Guanlong City asking and recording information from his surveys. 2 sisters, should I go take a look at the heavenly dragon treasure? Chen Xiang asked. He learned that there were a lot of true martial realm experts from other sects that came here. He was sure that if a little shrimp of the 9th level of the mortal martial realm were to go, he would be unable to even see a glimpse of the treasure. Go and take a look. Although it's almost impossible to get anything, it will introduce a new perspective and present a new outlook on the world for you. It will not be bad for you. Bai Yu replied. Su Meiyao also similarly agreed. If it really is a mysterious realm, then maybe you can fish up something, but in the case that you sense that something isn't right, escape immediately. Chen Xiang nodded his head. He had already completed the task at this point. Now he only thought of going to take a look and nothing more. After leaving Guanlong City, Chen Xiang entered into a patch of jungle. Like everyone else, he did not walk on the road because he knew that there existed some good herbs in the Paris Hi plus ing Dragon Mountains. He thought of taking a slight detour to see if he could chance upon some good herbs. Soon after entering inside the mountain forest, Chen Xiang discovered a set of demon beast footprints. From observing the footprints, he concluded that the overall mass of the demon beast was definitely not small, which made him somewhat curious. He had not hunted or killed demon beasts after leaving the extreme martial sect. Besides, he also knew that demon beasts were good at finding spirit herbs. If he tracked it down, then maybe something good would be waiting for him. Chen Xiang followed the footprints as more than 3 hours passed. The sky had turned dark, but he could still clearly see everything inside the forest. And in the distance he saw a black lion as tall as human. When Chen Xiang had been residing in the inner courtyard regular hall, he read a book about demon beasts. This black lion was a very ferocious grade 10 demon beast, and also had a great chance to evolve into a spirit beast. It was called the night hunting lion. Who is it? A cold and tender shout resounded. Chen Xiang saw the night hunting lion from the top of a tree before jumping down. A girl had been sitting on the night hunting lion's back, and looked around with a ruthless and arrogant gaze. At this moment, Chen Xiang went into hiding behind the tree. He was greatly startled because he just saw what the night hunting lion was eating a moment ago. It turned out to be some humans, beast martial sect's disciples. No one had ever thought that they were using human corpses for feeding their demon beasts. Chen Xiang secretly thought. Although he was far away, he could still see the civilian attire on the human corpse. It was easy for a martial arts sect's disciple to casually kidnap some civilians, however Chen Xiang saw dozens of human bodies just a moment ago. Chen Xiang clenched his fists tightly. He was an extreme martial sect's disciple, and they were responsible for protecting the extreme martial province. Yet now their civilians were actually being grabbed by beast martial sect disciples for the food of their demon beasts. How could he not be furious? If this matter were to spread out, it would make all the citizens throughout the entire extreme martial sect furious beyond belief. Chen Xiang went out and walked towards the night-hunting lion with a cold look on his face. As he coldly glared at the girl sitting on the back of the night-hunting lion, he thought this girl was extremely hideous despite her pretty appearance. "Who is it? Quickly show yourself, or I'll treat you just like these mortals and make you food for Little Black." The girl loudly shouted before taking out a long sword. "Beast, shut your f-u-c, king mouth." Seeing the night-hunting lion chewing on human flesh, Chen Xiang felt anger seeping through his veins and into his heart. True qi gushed out from beneath his feet, and he instantly leapt right next to the night-hunting lion. Like lightning, his finger shot out. That fingertip was surging and was coated in invisible universal true qi, which directly penetrated the night-hunting lion's skull. In that one blow of his, Chen Xiang not only casted the profound aura finger, but did so with universal true qi. Blood madly gushed out from the little hole that had been punctured by his finger on the stark head of the night-hunting lion. TLN, we have used Peerless Martial Sect instead of Peerless Sect to have more better flow. Chapter 99 Powerful Enemy. Chapter 99 Powerful Enemy. When the girl saw the blood spewing out from the hole, she couldn't help but emit a sharp shriek. On the other hand, the night-hunting lion let out one last howl before falling down to her surprise. "Go die!" Chen Xiang hurled a lightning-fast fist that had a huge white tiger's head on its end. Seemingly endless amounts of slaughter qi covered his body. That death-seeking fist hammered onto the night-hunting lion's giant head, as it burst with a thunderous sound that was followed by the trembling of the ground beneath it. The white tiger divine fists carried seemingly endless amounts of slaughter qi and obliterated any life qi from the night-hunting lion, which erased any functions of life that was still present in it. In layman's terms, the night-hunting lion was dead. Chen Xiang released flames onto the corpses littered on the ground and cremated them before coldly turning to glare at the trembling azure-gowned girl. The night-hunting lion's body fell and heavily hit the ground. The charming face of that azure-gowned girl suddenly twisted. "What did you just do?" "I killed this beast," Chen Xiang coldly replied. "Your beast martial sect was actually doing these kinds of things in the extreme martial province. I will definitely report this matter to the extreme martial sect." You are an extreme martial sect disciple?" That azure-gowned girl's eyebrows twitched while she asked this in a vicious tone. "Yes," Chen Xiang replied. "My Little Black only ate a few mortals, yet your extreme martial sect is going to interfere? For us this kind of thing is extremely common. Those few mortal lives, even 10,000 of them would not be comparable with my Little Black. Yet you actually killed Little Black for the sake of these mortals. I'm going to kill you." The azure-gowned girl's face had turned blue and her entire body was trembling from anger. Chen Xiang's brow wrinkled. To his surprise, the beast martial sect disciples often did such things. This made him even more angry. Don't you know this is the extreme martial province? When I report this matter to the extreme martial sect, just wait to see what happens to your beast martial sect." Chen Xiang said. "You will not be able to go back." From far away a husky voice came. A black silhouette flashed into sight and appeared in front of the azure-gowned girl. It was a middle-aged woman with a plain appearance wearing a black robe. A true martial realm expert. Chen Xiang clenched his fists. He had not expected there would be such an expert hiding around here. In the next moment, He was able to tell that the black-robed woman was either the azure-gowned girl's mother or her teacher. What made Chen Xiang frightened was that the black-robed woman actually had a snake with a red skull twining around her arm. It was a flat-headed snake with black scales, and this was a rare spirit beast called the soul-tracking snake. Its strength was around the true martial realm, and its poison was even more terrifying. Teacher, he killed my little black. I want his fate to be worse than death. I want to mow on his flesh bit by bit. The azure-gowned girl said with hatred, ruthlessly glaring towards Chen Xiang. If you go back and inform the extreme martial sect, it will indeed become a disaster for us, but now you will not be able to return. Just as she finished speaking, the black-robed woman transformed into a black shadow and appeared behind Chen Xiang's back, and blasted out a palm. In that moment, Chen Xiang could feel the 5 zhang 6 fu within his body tighten, while his meridians threatened to burst. A mouthful of blood gushed out from his mouth as his body flew towards the azure-gowned girl. TLN. 5 zhang 6 fu. Basically internal organs, however they are divided into yin and yang according to Chinese medicine. 5 zhang Yin, heart, liver, spleen, lung, kidney, while 6 fu Yin Ji, small intestine, large intestine, gallbladder, urinary bladder, stomach and sanjiao. The azure-gowned girl drew her long sword and fiercely stabbed towards the incoming Chen Xiang. The blow penetrated his chest thoroughly, all the way through his back. Chen Xiang looked up only to see the azure-gowned girl's ferocious eyes. She fiercely pulled out her long sword and proceeded to vigorously kick him in his abdomen, making Chen Xiang fly onto the ground. Just a moment ago, Chen Xiang had been struck by the palm blow from the true martial realm black-robed woman. He had been seriously injured and lost all of his strength. Just now did he truly realize how powerful true martial realm martial artists were. Their true chi was much more vigorous than the 10th level mortal martial realm martial artists. The azure-gowned girl saw Chen Xiang could not move and proceeded to take out a small knife before walking towards Chen Xiang. I want to mow your flesh bit by bit. The black-robed woman did not take any action. Coldly looking on, she seemed very sure that Chen Xiang could not escape. Chen Xiang hated himself very much in his heart. He hated his own incompetence and the lack of strength. He vowed to himself that he would definitely kill the azure-gowned girl in front of him and the black-robed woman who injured him. I'll remember both of you. Until you're dead, this father will not rest. Chen Xiang suddenly roared. The black-robed woman immediately responded as the snake on her arms flew out. But just before it reached Chen Xiang's body, a large amount of water suddenly appeared in front of it as it crashed into the wall of water. In that instant Chen Xiang casted Water Wall from the Black Tortoise Divine Exercise. The vigorous Black Tortoise True Qi transformed into a large amount of water which was currently spurting out and blocking the snake. After having done all this, the ground beneath Chen Xiang turned into a pool water, after which Chen Xiang disappeared below, and that pool of water vanished. Teacher, what kind of martial skill is this? What should we do? The azure-gowned girl was shocked and angrily asked. Rest assured. When the time comes, we'll refuse to acknowledge these acts. That brat is just a little disciple of the inner sect, while I'm a true disciple of the beast martial sect, who's reached the true martial realm. The extreme martial sect will never believe that brat's words. The black-robed woman sneered while stroking the red-headed snake on her arm. What Chen Xiang displayed this time was a type of skill inside the Black Tortoise Divine Exercise, called Water Escape. It was a very mystical martial skill and allowed a shoal of water to suddenly emerge out of the earth. The caster would then be carried by a whirlpool and enter into that water shoal as the whirlpool carried the caster deep into the ground. It would drill past the surface to create a sage deep below the ground and carry the caster by a river stream to a place far away, allowing the caster to escape. Just as Chen Xiang released all of his Black Tortoise True Qi, he congratulated himself for learning this move. Otherwise it would have been truly very difficult for him to escape that dire situation today. A small river was flowing on one side and Chen Xiang was lying on its sore. His whole body was drenched and he had a pale complexion. He looked lethargic as he took out a little bit of the spirit GRAS and placed it in his mouth while barely conscious. He quickly recovered from his injuries and swallowed a few more healing dawn. He soon regained some of his strength and was currently leaning against a tree near the riverside and was resting. "How are you?" Bai Yu came out of the storage ring and gently asked. Su Meiyao came on, wiped the stain off his face with concern and worry, saying, "Be careful next time. After you come out, do not think like it will be the same as how the extreme martial sect is, being safe every day. The true marital realm experts inside the extreme martial sect are bound by sect's rules, otherwise they could kill you with just their fingertips." Chen Xiang clenched his fists, his face filled with killing intent. "I'll become stronger and definitely kill those two women. Don't you have 4 true elemental Dan? Eat them," Bai Yu said. With the two beauties showing such a large amount of concern for him, Chen Xiang felt very warm inside his heart. He secretly decided that he would never make them worry again in the future, besides he was also their only hope. "I'm sorry, I almost died," Chen Xiang guiltily said. "No problem, everything's fine as long as you're alive, just pay more attention next time," Bai Yu said. Her tone seemed slightly thawed compared to the usual ice-cold tone. "Eat those 700 true Qi Dawn and the 4 true elemental Dawn of yours. With that you might be able to enter the 10th level of the mortal martial realm. However, even though you will gain the strength to resist those kinds of experts, it is still far from enough to win against that woman," Su Meiyao said. Chen Xiang nodded his head in response and continued healing himself. The two beauties, upon seeing that Chen Xiang did not have any serious problems, let loose a deep breath before returning inside the ring. Chapter 100 Completion Stage. Chapter 100 Completion Stage. Chen Xiang found one cave inside the cliff inside the Paris Hi+ing Dragon Mountains, in which he took the 4 true elemental dawn, entered a cultivation state, and digested the vast true qi brought by these 4 true elemental dawn. At this time what he need to do was compress a large amount of true qi into each of the divine beast forms, making the beast forms clearer. He had the yin and yang divine veins and the tai chi divine exercise, which could allow him to quickly refine the vast amount of true qi, and at the same time could suck in the rich spirit qi around him. Chen Xiang was now not only cultivating true qi but also at the same time using a large amount of true qi to nourish the skeleton inside his body. A large amount of true qi was integrating with his body, making his body grow. 4 days passed by, and the 4-colored mist shrouding Chen Xiang's body suddenly spread out, only to see a stream of bizarre and powerful qi flow suddenly surging out from the Chen Xiang's body. Chen Xiang was already successful in completing the 4 beast forms in the 4 corners, making the 4 true qi beast forms clearly discernible and lifelike. Unconsciously his consciousness entered the dantian within that tai chi yin and yang diagram, like as if he was the one with the yin and yang diagram. At the moment it was as if he was sitting in the center of the yin and yang diagram, and he was at the center of the universe, and the 4 divine beasts were blazing suns hanging in 4 directions, looking magnificent and breathtaking. In the east was a dazzling azure light. The azure dragon was opening his mouth and waving its claws. In the south there was a giant, red bird, whose whole body was surging with fiery light, as if was burning with intense fire. It was the vermilion bird. In the west, Hi+ing in a holy white light, was the furiously glaring majestic white tiger. In the north was a mighty giant beast, as if a giant dragon and a giant tortoise had fused together. It was the black tortoise. Yin and yang represented the whole universe, and this world was guarded by the divine beasts of the 4 directions. The bodies of the four divine beasts were exuding vicissitudes of an ancient atmosphere, making people feel as if they had existed since eternity, and Chen Xiang, who was in the center of the Tai Chi yin and yang diagram, felt even smaller. However, he knew, he was the master of the Tai Chi yin and yang diagram, and these four ancient divine beasts were created out from his cultivation. Chen Xiang only now knew that the Tai Chi divine exercise, and the divine exercise of four symbols, after coordinating with his yin and yang divine vein, was actually so powerful. He felt that he entered a martial arts road that was unusual, and if he could only release the complete power of these beast forms, he would be able to dominate the world. Only the great earth divine elephant is left. Chen Xiang was also secretly shocked by the true qi contained in the true elemental Dan, and although it was only 2 grades higher than the true qi Dan, there was a huge difference. Chen Xiang took out all of his true qi Dan, and as if he was eating a meal, he stuffed them inside his mouth, and fiercely chewed, while at the same time operating the divine exercises to refine them. Fortunately no one saw him wolfing down the true qi Dan, otherwise they definitely would have wet their pants. Only Chen Xiang, this monstrous genius alchemist, would eat the true qi Dan in such way, and yet was not even sad. Chen Xiang faintly felt that the beast form guarding the center was completely congealing its form. The amount of true qi required was a lot more when compared with his other beast forms. He could see in the center of the Tai Chi diagram, the vague beast form was shrouded in a ball of golden mist and was non-stop engulfing that mist. 2 days passed, and a golden qi burst out from Chen Xiang's body, followed by a gus Hi+ing of colorless true qi which shattered his clothes, only to see his body constantly alternating between 5 different colors. His muscles also swelled up, making him look very scary. His body color was changing faster and faster. Even from his pores a dark gray mucus was overflowing, and the muscles of his body were also stiff as stone. An explosive sound resounded in his mind, and at that moment, he just felt a tremendously huge strength surging into his limbs and bones, while in his mind the roars of the 5 divine beasts were resounding. Their roars were very loud and powerful. Chen Xiang opened his eyes, took a deep breath, and his face was briming with happiness, because he had finally entered the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, the completion stage. The only thing left for him was to impact the true martial realm. Seeing the giant elephant above that Tai Chi yin and yang diagram in HS Dantian, Chen Xiang slightly smiled, as he had successfully congealed the 5 divine beast forms in his Dantian. The minutiae of their forms were clearly visible, and the Tai Chi diagram was slowly and quietly spinning, uptaking the spirit Qi between heaven and earth. True martial realm, I also dare to fight with them. Chen Xiang tightly clenched his fists, his nails deeply entered in his palm. Previously he remembered the 2 vicious women, and he could not help but get angry. After you've entered the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, although you indeed are very powerful, but you are facing true martial realm experts, so you still have no chance of winning. If you had a slightly powerful spirit weapon, perhaps you would successfully be able to sneak attack. Su Meiyao said, and she knew what intentions Chen Xiang had in his heart at this moment, but she also knew the difference between Chen Xiang and true martial realm martial artists. After entering the true martial realm, martial artists would be reborn, washed of the mortal qi, and would have a lifespan of 1,000 years. By no means would a mortal martial realm martial artist be able to fight them. Chen Xiang nodded his head, took out black tights, wore them, and jumped down from the cave. He walked, according to map, towards the heavenly dragon treasure. The map was very detailed, and Chen Xiang soon came to the location marked for the hidden treasure. It was a huge canyon, and at the entrance of the canyon there were thousands of people gathered. Among these people, a lot of people were holding a sheet in their hands which was the map, but Chen Xiang also wasn't clear why this map was spread. Mixed in the crowd, Chen Xiang was clearly able to see the giant canyon, and what made him shocked was that in the middle of canyon, to his surprise, a fiery red aura was Hi+ing. Occasionally a few red lightnings were also Hi+ing, and one after another, intensely hot and violent chi waves were Hi+ing out. At this time, Chen Xiang was sure of that the heavenly dragon treasure was inside this mysterious realm, and that fiery red aura in the giant canyon was the entrance. Chen Xiang soon found out that a very strong barrier was before that entrance. In addition to this, he also came to know that if anyone besides martial artists at the true martial realm tried approaching it, they would be rebounded by that power, and if they forcefully tried to enter it, they would be subjected to such a force that they would be squeezed into pieces of meat. After learning this information, in his heart, Chen Xiang was delighted. He quickly found one relatively high location, and carefully swept through the people towards the center to find that azure gown girl. That azure gown girl's strength was below the true martial realm, and her teacher was a true martial realm martial artist. That was why her teacher definitely would have entered the mysterious realm to seek treasures. This way, as long as he found that azure gown girl, he would easily able to kill her. He didn't have to spend too long. Chen Xiang saw a dozen people sitting together far away, and some of those people were young. In addition to the azure gown girl, there were some boys, and they were surrounding that azure gown girl like how the stars surrounded the moon. Chen Xiang from afar could see that azure gown girl had a long face because her demon beast was killed by Chen Xiang, and she was powerless in killing Chen Xiang. This especially troubled her heart. The azure gown girl accidentally glanced towards the side of the crowd, but suddenly saw that deadpan handsome face of Chen Xiang. Looking at him, she could not help but be surprised for a moment, and in her heart she was very pleasantly surprised. She certainly would not have thought of Chen Xiang having the strength to kill her, and she also knew although Chen Xiang was able to flee, he was also seriously injured. Senior brothers and junior brothers, that is the brat who killed my little black. Although he is somewhat powerful, but he was struck by my teacher's palm, so he is definitely seriously injured. You go and catch him, I want to hack him into pieces. The azure gown girl's face had a ruthless look while she spoke. Chapter 101 Fury. Chapter 101 Fury. In the distance, Chen Xiang could hear the words spoken by the azure gown girl, and in his heart he was constantly laughing. Currently he was at the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, and was an invincible-like existence among the mortal martial realm martial artists. Even if 10 martial artists at the 10th level of the mortal martial realm tried to besiege him, it would still be very difficult to defeat him. This azure gown girl could be counted as beauty, and that was why those boys always followed her plan. Everyone wanted to look prestigious in front of her, not to mention the fact that they heard that Chen Xiang was seriously injured. Without any delay they drew their weapons and walked towards Chen Xiang. Obviously, they could also see Chen Xiang walking towards them. Amidst the crowd, those with keen perceptions could see the beast martial sect disciples taking out their weapons, and with a terrifyingly imposing manner, Hi+ing towards Chen Xiang. These people were not able to go treasure hunting, and thus they were very depressed, so when they saw such a good show playing out in front of them, they immediately shouted. Moreover, it was also a conflict between beast martial sect disciples and another person. That brat truly does not want to live. It would be troublesome to confront the beast martial sect disciples head-on. Besides, those are the inner sect disciples, so let's see how this brat dies. One person said. Not necessarily, look at that brat's posture. He is not an ordinary person. While the 10 beast martial sect disciples are Hi+ing towards him, he is not fazed by it and is calmly walking towards them too. Another person said. The 10 beast martial sect disciples were not willing to fall far behind their fellow apprentices. Amidst them one powerful young man ran even more fiercely, and holding a long sword, rushed towards Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang suddenly saw through the strength of these beast martial sect disciples. Though they were from the inner sect, but they were far worse when compared with the inner sect disciples of the extreme martial sect. However, they were still 10th level mortal martial realm martial artists, thus each of their actions were too quick. When the sword stabbed towards him, its speed was too quick and was difficult to react to, but to everyone's surprise Chen Xiang ducked. In the blink of an eye, like lightning, the penetrating long sword arrived in front of Chen Xiang, and in turn Chen Xiang fiercely jumped up, jumping above that young man's head. Only to see Chen Xiang's palm, which was overflowing with a slight azure true qi, pressing against that young man's head. This kind of speed was even faster than that young man's sword. Watching the next scene they could not help but felt their stomach churn as Chen Xiang's arm pressed against the head of that young man, fiercely pressing down, and was similar to the dough being pressed to make a chapati. That 8 feet tall young man turned into a pie due to the pressure. Everyone saw on the ground that a blood meat pie formed out of flesh, clothes, and hairs all mixed together. Everyone could not help but feel like vomiting, and they were even more shocked that with just pressure, he obliterated a 10th level mortal martial realm martial artist. Was he a true martial realm martial artist? Everyone was thinking as such in their hearts. Those beast martial sect disciples, originally Rus. Hi+ing towards Chen Xiang, also immediately stopped in their place, and they were even shuddering. They were close enough to see their own senior brother being pressed into a meat pie, and this kind of strength was extremely similar to the true martial realm's strength. At this time Chen Xiang was staring at the azure gown girl, and that azure gown girl also had a look of shock and fear. She was perfectly clear of the strength of that young man who was made into meat patty a moment ago, and compared to her he was even more formidable. However, he was the same as an ant in front of Chen Xiang. During the few seconds that the azure gown girl was dazed, Chen Xiang flew out like the wind and in the blink of an eye arrived in front of that azure gown girl. You, senior brother. Save. The azure gown girl reacted and emitted a shriek, only have spoken these words before an azure chi aura enveloped her. Chen Xiang blasted a palm, and a strong and fearsome wood true chi was directly released out, transforming into a chi aura, hitting that azure gown girl. Similar to countless razors all cutting at the same time, in the blink of an eye, culled that azure gown girl into a pile of minced meat. Even if one had stunning and alluring looks, in front of extremely strong power, it was similar to being an ant. The atmosphere around everyone was as if they did not dare to breath as they were worried about offending this one fiend, who with just a casual move, killed a martial artist at the 10th level of the mortal martial realm. Furthermore, after killing a person, he did not even glance at her, as if he had just crushed an ant and did not care about it at all. Of course, the frigid, dark, cold slaughter chi from Chen Xiang's body made everyone feel inexplicable fear. Chen Xiang just looked like a 17 to 18-year-old teen, but no one had heard of such a character with such a fearsome strength and an ATTI. 2 that kills so decisively. You want to take revenge for her? Chen Xiang stared at those beast martial sect disciples, making them scared and speechless, because Chen Xiang in their eyes was a true martial realm martial artist, who was also so cruel. Those beast martial sect disciples quickly shook their heads, and Chen Xiang already made them so scared that they were trembling. After all, no one wanted to die. I'll ask you one question, answer me honestly, or you will end up just like them. Chen Xiang glanced over that meat pie, which was not that far from the minced meat. The beast martial sect disciples hurriedly nodded their heads. Have you ever grabbed extreme martial province civilians to feed your demon beasts? Chen Xiang asked, and his voice was very loud, allowing the martial artists gathered here to hear. The majority of the martial artists here were from the extreme martial province, and when they heard the question they could not help but shudder. especially the martial artists who lived all year round in Guanlong City, as they had often heard information about people disappearing. At this time the crowd was already discussing with each other, using civilians to feed the demon beast. This issue would create a horrifying public outrage, and to quell it everyone must be executed. The beast martial sect disciples, after hearing the noisy arguments, were sweating profusely. At this time they also couldn't answer yes, nor they could answer no. They also did not dare to lie, because in front of the monstrous and murderous Chen Xiang, who was using his terrifying eyes to stare at them, it gave them a great burden on their heart. "I'll only count to 2-1. Chen Xiang only counted this number, and the beast martial sect disciples nodded their heads, but just as they nodded their heads, both of Chen Xiang's fists shook, while a white mist gushed out from them. Endless slaughter qi accompanied by a deadly death qi gushed out, and this kind of terrifying slaughter qi made people feel as if they were in a battlefield littered with corpses. "Go die!" Chen Xiang punched out both his fists, and countless white giant tigers carrying endless amounts of slaughter qi lashed out, madly and viciously biting those 9 beast martial sect disciples. Just in the blink of an eye, those beast martial sect disciples disappeared and vanished, leaving only a few demon beasts and those people with a lingering fear of slaughter qi. After casting out white tiger divine fists, Chen Xiang leaped up and treaded on the air, casted Qin Gong Pa S, said over everyone's head, and entered that canyon inside. Seeing Chen Xiang entering the canyon, everyone in their hearts were even more sure that Chen Xiang was a true martial realm expert, and seeing true martial realm martial artists coming out and fighting, it made them all excited. At the same time they also understood why Chen Xiang had acted, because beast martial sect disciples had caught civilians and fed them to their demon beasts. Amidst these martial artists, most of them felt very angry, and this time the beast martial sect gave them a very bad impression. Chen Xiang closed on that fiery red light ball, but did not sense any power and instead felt very warm, which made him somewhat inconceivable. Chen Xiang very easily went through that light ball, and after walking 10 steps inside the fiery red Pa-S sage, he saw a flat wasteland. Inside the wasteland there was a stone monument that was as tall as a human. A few tens of zhang away from the stone monument, there was a giant red flower as tall as half of a human, which was as big as a face and looked very bewitching. Next to that red flower, around 10 or so people had surrounded it, and their palms were stuck against each other's. Their entire face was serious, and some even had blood overflowing from the corner of their mouths. These true martial realm martial artists' palms were against each other, and they were using their true qi to contend, and it could be seen that they were disputing over that giant red flower. Chapter 102 Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade. Chapter 102 Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade. Not long after Chen Xiang came in, he heard one ice-cold and surprised voice. "How did you get in?" Followed by this sound, he looked towards that stone monument only to see a black-robed woman crawling out from behind it, and it was the very same woman who had previously almost killed him. At this time Chen Xiang also saw next to that huge red flower there was a headless dead snake. This black-robed woman was injured, moreover she was seriously injured. Chen Xiang, in his heart, was secretly pleased, and at the same time he walked towards that black-robed woman. When the black-robed woman saw Chen Xiang with a look of resentment, in her heart she could not help but feel shocked, as she did not understand how Chen Xiang was able to recover from his injuries so soon, and also able to enter the mysterious realm where only martial artists in the true martial realm could come. The black-robed woman quickly ran next to the 12 true martial realm martial artists far away, and among these people there were also beast martial sects true martial realm martial artists. As she was injured she was worried that she might not be Chen Xiang's opponent. "Senior brother, this is the guy who killed Qing Air's little black." The black-robed woman had a vicious look as she looked at Chen Xiang. "We absolutely cannot allow this brat to live. He also knows about the feeding matter." One bald middle-aged man looked at Chen Xiang, ruthlessly smiled, and then nodded his head. After Chen Xiang saw the black-robed woman leaving, he didn't follow her but came next to the stone monument, because he felt that this stone monument was exuding a particular atmosphere which was very familiar to him. Does the heavenly dragon treasure have just that flower? It should not be like this. Chen Xiang muttered, and one of his hands pressed on that stone monument. At this time those true martial realm martial artists, whose palms were right against each other, all looked at Chen Xiang. They were contending their true qi and everyone refused to admit defeat, otherwise they would not be able to get this huge red flower, because it was a very precious and rare spirit herb. After Chen Xiang touched the stone monument, the azure dragon true qi madly gushed out from his body, penetrating that stone monument, and in only the blink of an eye, that stone monument burst out with an azure light, making those true martial realm martial artists very shocked. Just a moment ago they too had touched the stone monument, but it did not cause such a scene. After the azure light disappeared, the rocks in the outer surface of the stone monument fell off, and to everyone's surprise they only saw a transparent square box, but inside that transparent box there was a 5-foot-long pitch-black broadsword. This broadsword looked very filthy, but after Chen Xiang saw a lifelike small dragon carved on the blade hilt, he knew this blade was unusual. Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade. It's the Azure Dragon Divine Weapon part of the 4 beasts' divine weapons. Su Meiyao shouted due to surprise. After Chen Xiang heard this, in his heart he was also shocked. A palm blasted open that transparent box, and he grabbed that blade hilt. This blade was very heavy, and Chen Xiang had not expected this, which made the broadsword fall from his hand, inserting it into the ground. Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade, its weight is inexhaustible, and according to owner's strength it will have a certain weight. Only you will be able to bring forth its strength, and only you can control this blade. Su Meiyao said. Chen Xiang in the next moment estimated that this azure dragon slaughtering devil blade should now weigh a few 10,000 jin. Such a little thing actually had this kind of weight. It was truly incredible and was indeed a divine weapon. This made him very excited, and now he did not need to look for a spirit weapon, as he had the azure dragon slaughtering devil blade, which was enough to allow him to roam freely in the world of martial arts. The transparent box not only had azure dragon slaughtering devil blade, but also had a yellow beast skin and a small box. On the beast skin there was a martial skill, furthermore it was another dragon slaying divine martial skill. The Dragon Slayer's 7 killing cut. Inside the small box there was a fiery red Dan, and it appeared to be a very extraordinary spirit Dan. Afterward Chen Xiang became aware of the fiery gazes coming from those people far away, and it was as if he was a naked girl being watched by a group of men. Chen Xiang quickly put all the things inside his ring, and let Su Meiyao and Bai Yu manage it. Brat, those things are not for you to take, and if you know what is good for you quickly take it out. That bald middle-aged man shouted, and he was the senior brother of that black-robed woman. Chen Xiang smirked and said, "Why can I not take them? I found it. Moreover there is no provision that only you can seek treasure inside the heavenly dragon treasure house." The black-robed woman's eyebrow twitched. She took out a long sword and slowly walked towards Chen Xiang. She once had injured Chen Xiang and knew Chen Xiang's strength, so she just didn't understand why Chen Xiang could come here, but she absolutely would not believe that Chen Xiang had the strength at the true martial realm. Otherwise she would not have defeated him and made him flee. She also believed Chen Xiang was now seriously injured. If she killed Chen Xiang, all those things would be hers. That was why, even if she was injured, she also dared to go. Ha ha, here all the treasure belongs to our beast martial sect. One middle-aged man madly laughed, and it seems there were a lot of beast martial sects true martial realm martial artists. At this time they were thwarting other sects true martial realm martial artists, allowing the black-robed woman to behead Chen Xiang. Seeing the black-robed woman having pale face and a weak chi aura within her body, Chen Xiang in his heart secretly had a good laugh. He was waiting for the middle-aged woman to come closer to him, and a sliver of sinister smile flashed on Chen Xiang's mouth. "I'll tell you one thing. Before coming here, I killed your apprentice, now I'll send you to see her." While speaking, in Chen Xiang's hand suddenly appeared a broadsword. This broadsword was the Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade, but it was no longer pitch black and instead was a very beautiful broadsword. At this moment the Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade was as if it was carved from a beautiful azure jade, and above the blade there were colorful spirit veins. These spirit veins were as if a group of dragons were clawing or roaring, and was full of a forbidding aura. The sharp blade edge was glittering with a cold light which made it even more frightening, and was as if it was able to cut off everything in the world. The lifelike dragon head on the blade hilt was even more daunting, and if you weren't blind, one could see that this blade was a peerless divine weapon. Chen Xiang, holding this blade, and having this kind of blade in his hand, felt as if he was invincible in the world. As he poured Azure Dragon True Qi into the blade, it transformed as such, and this was also what Su Meiyao had told him. After this blade absorbed True Dragon True Qi, it excited the spirit veins, allowing the one armed with this blade to have even more powerful strength, and the true qi released through this blade would be increased many times over in quant. 1 Tai. At this time Chen Xiang felt the threatening atmosphere released by Azure Dragon's Slaughtering Devil Blade, and even he himself could not help but deeply fear it. "Junior sister!" That bald middle-aged man thunderously roared, and that black-robed woman also felt the danger. She quickly released all the remaining true qi inside her body and formed one true qi Hi+ELD. Chen Xiang slashed the blade swiftly and with hatred, drawing one round azure arc-like afterimage, and chopped towards the waist of that black-robed woman. The Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade swept away all obstacles, disregarded that true qi Hi+ELD and directly said through it. The black-robed woman was like a thin sapling, and she was cut down from her waist by that blade. Blood was overflowing from her, but she did not die and was instead struggling on the ground. Her cries were full of fear, and that azure white face of hers was distorted due to pain. "Go see your apprentice." Chen Xiang sneered, gathered a rich amount of universal true qi, and smacked a palm downwards. The invisible universal true qi transformed into a giant palm, and struck the body of the black-robed woman, who was made into a meat patty. I want to fight it out with you," that bald middle-aged man secretly roared, and both of his eyes were very red, but he was incapable of stopping the palm, otherwise, he would also have been hurt. Other true martial realm martial artists, seeing Chen Xiang having such a strength, could not help but be shocked. Chen Xiang gave them a sneer and slowly walked towards them, and his every step was very heavy. After all, the Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade that was in his hand and shrouded in a belligerent atmosphere weighed about 50,000 jin. Chapter 103 Future Crisis. Chapter 103 Future Crisis. As Chen Xiang walked towards the 12 men, they could not help but panic. Just a moment ago they had witnessed the resolute killing attitude of Chen Xiang. Even while facing a woman he was able to attack with so much hatred, then what would happen to them? All of them were people who had reached the true martial realm. It was definitely not easy for them to arrive at this level, and they obviously wouldn't want to die. Chen Xiang took only 2 steps before the 12 people separated, as if they had a prior agreement. Seeing this, Chen Xiang immediately drew the Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade, and in the blink of an eye a pair of vermilion bird fire wings appeared behind his back. He instantly flew high into the sky, but just after he left, the previous place he was standing was attacked by several waves of powerful qi. If he had just been half a step slower, he himself might have been reduced to a meat patty. That was the power when several true martial realm cultivators joined hands to take action. Chen Xiang directly flew out of the mysterious realm. He knew that he had already obtained the most valuable possession, and was very satisfied with it. Furthermore, he had also managed to kill that black-robed woman, so his great hatred was now satisfied and his debt had been repaid. Watching Chen Xiang flutter with those ma's sieve wings and fly into the distance, all the true martial realm martial artists were dumbfounded. Even they didn't have such a martial skill. Their faces were filled with envy, and they yearned to steal it and claim it as their own. Your beast martial sect has become enemies with an extraordinary little devil. If this brat doesn't die soon, it'll certainly become very troublesome for you later on. Gloated an old man. A bald middle-aged man along with several other similarly aged men were furious, but they could only harbor anger in their hearts. Even if they were to expend all their power and put in all their effort, they were unable to catch up with the flying Chen Xiang. While flying away from the mysterious realm, Chen Xiang was briming with happiness. He had never expected to get such a giant harvest and obtain the legendary Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade. This Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade voluntarily recognized you as its owner. However, it's just missing a very important component, and without that it cannot be called a divine weapon. Su Meiyao sighed in regret. What's missing? Chen Xiang knew the powerful strength of the Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade, and its ability to become heavier matching his own strength. Imagine a case where the heavy blade is slashed downwards during a fight coupled with the powerful true qi coursing through it. The power would be unimaginable. It's missing the dragon's soul. All the 4 beats divine weapons are half finished, and none of them contain genuine souls, which is why they cannot be considered divine weapons. Su Meiyao sighed. I just learned of this matter today after I came into contact with the Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade. So what if it's missing the dragon's soul? Chen Xiang asked. He thought that the Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade was still immensely powerful. When he had used it previously, he felt very happy. Wielding that sort of power made him feel as if he had the ability to look down upon the entire world. You don't know. You might not be able to see it now, because currently you're only able to use a tiny portion of this blade's power, which is why it currently makes no difference to you. Su Meiyao said. The Azure Dragon Slaughtering Devil Blade is tremendously lethal to anyone from the devil's domain. I only cultivate devil skills, yet when I touched it a moment ago I felt extremely uncomfortable. This time it was Bao Yu who spoke. Devil's domain? What's that? It was the first time Chen Xiang had heard of such a thing. Su Meiyao did not respond and Bai Yu didn't say anything. After Chen Xiang waited for a while, the only thing Su Meiyao said was, above the mortal world there is the immortal domain, devil domain and demon domain, known as the 3 great heavenly realms. Compared to the mortal world, they are a higher rank of existence, a different realm. These 3 vastly different domains are almost independent and completely separated, but they share a common meeting point. Every now and then, the intersection between them will open and all of the people from these 3 domains will gather and kill each other. Chen Xiang frowned and asked, so, does that make the immortal devil cliff the intersecting SPAC? This intersection point can move. However, once it is opened, humans, devils, and demons alike within the heavenly realms, and even the mortal world can all meet with one another. Su Meiyao declared in a dignified tone. If it was in the past, Chen Xiang would have just laughed it off after hearing such a statement. First off, he would never have believed such a thing, but even if he had believed it, he was just a little character and would be unaffected by it. But now things were different. He had the yin-yang divine vein along with some divine exercises, including a high talent in alchemy. The 3 great heavenly realms above the mortal world will fight with each other. Many lower rank worlds below them will also appear at the intersection and fight as well. However, the demons, devils and immortals within the heavenly realms will not descend onto the mortal world, otherwise it would have been destroyed long ago. Su Meiyao said. This statement caused Chen Xiang to worry a lot. Well, at least this will happen in the far-off future, and I don't need to worry about it happening soon. Chen Xiang pursed his lips and said, No, you will have to worry about it. The last time the three domains intersected was 100,000 years ago. Every time the intersection shows itself, around 100,000 years will have Pa said. I think it's almost about time for the next one. By you said. Chen Xiang became dispirited. Why had such a matter appeared before him? At that time, numerous worlds will encounter great calamity. In order to quickly return to the extreme martial sect, Chen Xiang did not stop flying for 5 days straight. Regarding the great war between the three domains, he did not brood over it. If it was bound to happen, then it would happen. There was nothing he could do about it now except to elevate his own strength. On the way, Chen Xiang learned from Su Meiyao about the background of that huge red flower inside the heavenly dragon treasure mysterious realm. It turned out that the flower was a high-grade profound-level tyrant emperor blazing flower. If one were to refine it into a dan and swallow it, fire-attributed martial artists and even the alchemists would earn endless benefits. It was a very rare and precious spirit herb requiring thousands of years to grow. After returning to Tianmen City, Chen Xiang found it to be a lot more lively. The streets were full of people and the extreme martial sect had become even more crowded. Sounds emitted, while the disciples were practicing their respective martial skills, could be heard coming one after another from many of the martial courtyards. It was an extremely lively atmosphere. The extreme martial sect was expanding. After its fusion with the peerless martial sect, the extreme martial sect became even more powerful. Moreover, the matter about a mysterious realm existing inside the sect had already been spread out, making the extreme martial sect seem even more powerful in the minds of all the martial artists in the Qinwu mainland. Walking on the road of the extreme martial sect, Chen Xiang saw a lot of beautiful young female disciples. These were the peerless martial sect's disciples, and although they fused with the extreme martial sect, all of them seemed to be happier than before. The peerless martial sect had around 100,000 disciples. Inside the extreme martial province there were billions of people. It was impossible for a girl to enter the extreme martial sect, so most of them choose to enter the peerless martial sect, resulting in the large amount of female disciples. This was a godsend for the extreme martial sect's male disciples. What made Chen Xiang speechless was that, in a span of 10 short days after the peerless martial sect fused with the extreme martial sect, there were already people voting and established. Plus-ing something along the lines of top 10 beauties, top 10 handsome males and top 10 great geniuses. When Chen Xiang arrived at the General Affairs courtyard, he saw a few such sheets posted outside. Sweeping through the list, he did not find his name anywhere. What the fuck? I'm actually not on any of the lists. The General Affairs courtyard was a specially designed place by the sect where missions were distributed and reported back to in order to receive their respective reward. It was managed by a few old men. However, Chen Xiang saw one amiable bald old man in here. Elder Wu, this is the details from my investigation of the heavenly dragon treasure. Chen Xiang didn't go to see those old men and instead directly handed the sheet to Wu Keiming. Chen Xiang and Wu Keiming had always been very familiar with each other and never needed a polite greeting from the one another. Chen Xiang returned extremely quickly, even a few days quicker compared to those messaging eagles. This was why the heavenly dragon treasure mysterious realm matter had not yet spread out here, otherwise this area would have been incomparably noisy. Chapter 104 Dragon Blood Dan. Chapter 104 Dragon Blood Dan. Wu Keiming took the sheet and opened it. He could not help but frown. Is there really a mysterious realm? Of course, I also entered to take a look, said Chen Xiang. He not only went in and took a look, but he also obtained good things, and also killed one person, his enemy. Oh, what did you get? Wu Keiming asked. It was not within the scope of the task, so it seems I don't have to explain it. Chen Xiang, while scratching his head, smilingly said. He knew he could not conceal the matter, but he also could not speak aloud too. This is the reward, take it. Wu Keiming gave Chen Xiang 3 true qi dan, and this made Chen Xiang to secretly despise them. He went so far away to complete the task, and actually only received 3 beans. In the eyes of Chen Xiang, they really were just beans, but in the eyes of the outer sect disciples, they were very precious dawn. Chen Xiang took it and directly tossed it into the air, then caught it using his mouth. Those 3 true qi dan accurately entered in his mouth, and it was as if he was one of those regular peanut eaters playfully eating peanut. Seeing all this, Wu Keiming's mouth twitched. Those 3 true qi dan were for the 3 of you. How can you eat them all? Wu Keiming scoffingly said. Chen Xiang left the general affairs courtyard. Those 3 true qi dan were not even enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. Besides, he himself alone finished the mission, so there was no need to divide it between those 2 rich kids with overflowing wealth. Returning to the martial courtyard, little Fatty hastily rushed out with a smile across his face and said, Younger brother Chen, didn't I speak to you about me having a sister before? She used to be a peerless martial sect disciple. Now that the peerless martial sect and the extreme martial sect have been fused, subsequently it will be much easier for you to meet her. Zhu Lao, didn't I also say I've shui xian xian? I do not want others, how come I don't see Xiao Dao with you? Chen Xiang said. Little rascal Yun? That guy is now in trouble. 2 days before he was swimming in the female disciples' martial courtyard, but now he does not even dare to look at the women, ha ha. Zhu Rong said while laughing, Do you know why this brat was called back by the Yun family? Last time when Chen Xiang saw Yun Xiaodao's teacher ordering him to go back, and although Chen Xiang's complexion became somewhat serious, but he was also secretly curious. What is the reason? Chen Xiang knew that for Yun Xiaodao it was definitely not a good thing, otherwise Zhu Rong would not be gloating and laughing so happily. As it is said that misfortune never comes single-handedly, and it's same for that brat too. He was called back to the Yun family because the Yun family wanted to arrange a fiancé for him, and she is one very annoying woman. Afterwards, 2 days before when he went to the female disciples' martial courtyard to play, he just happened to be MP into his fiancée, and on the spot he was violently beaten black and blue. His woman is very flagitious, so later on if you meet her, you've to be a little careful, Zhu Rong said gloatingly while laughing. Hey, in the future that brat should be able to manage his thing in his pants better. Chen Xiang also smiled lightly and said, Right, why is there only us in our martial courtyard? Chen Xiang returned and saw that the martial courtyard still remained the same, and did not have any other people. This martial courtyard was at the bottom of inner sects' martial courtyards, and when the peerless martial sect disciples first came, all the powerful disciples had challenged other inner sects' martial courtyards disciples. After obtaining those disciples' recognition, they were able to enter their martial courtyard. Our martial courtyard only has us 3, and every day not even a trace of little rascal Yun is to be seen. You were also outside on a mission, and I, this fatty, was also looked down by others. That's why we have been directly ignored by others, and no one bothered to enter this inner sect's worst martial courtyard. Zhu Rong helplessly said. Chen Xiang touched his chin, and a mysterious smile was on his face. Zhu Lao, I've now entered the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, and whenever that Yun Xiaodao decides to come back, we'll discuss what to do later. Zhu Rong was surprised for a moment, and that pair of squinted eyes fiercely widened. Chen Xiang, in the span of 10 or so days, had actually entered the 10th level of the mortal martial realm. When he was in the 9th level of the mortal martial realm, he was already heaven-defying, so what would he be like now? Zhu Lao, how are the handsome disciples in the most handsome list selected? Although Chen Xiang was not interested, but he was a little unhappy, because of how the list said that it was from an unanimous opinion. At this time Yun Xiaodao's jealous voice was heard, All the S.L.U.T.S. voted on their own. What S.H.I. plus T handsome disciples. They look more like chicks, and if I get the opportunity I'll certainly beat them till they are more uglier than Zhu Lao. Little b, A.S.T.A.R.D. You actually called me ugly? Father had a blissful appearance, and whoever saw me said I'm a little cutie. I can be considered to have the correct facial features, so where am I ugly? Zhu Rong suddenly retorted. Cute. Ha ha, this dead pig actually says he is cute, or else do I, your father, have to P.I.S.S. on you to illuminate your bare appearance? You better F.U.C. King not mention this joke to others, or they will laugh themselves to death. Yun Xiaodao was madly laughing while holding his stomach. Chen Xiang also couldn't contain his laughter, and at last he also burst into laughter. You are envious of my blissful appearance. Zhu Rong's fat face was very red due to anger. Yun Xiaodao spat on the ground, and then said with a smile to Chen Xiang, Elder brother Chen, I'll take you to take a look at my sisters. They are all peerless martial sect disciples, and if you're pleased. Hey hey! Chen Xiang, you should never go. These women's eyes are on top of their head. Furthermore, they look even more repugnant than the squinty-eyed guy. Zhu Rong hastily said, Tielin, eyes on top their head, look at everyone as if they are beneath them. Xiaodao, I just came back and I'm a little tired. I would like to rest first. The instant Chen Xiang finished speaking he ran away, making Yun Xiaodao very helpless, but he also did not have confidence in his own proud and arrogant sisters. Little rascal Yun, you're also being avoided. Although you have one sister who can be ranked in the top 10 beautiful list, but Chen Xiang's fiancé is Xue Xianxian. Your sisters who have their eyes on top of their head are simply not comparable with the other party. Zhu Rong contemptuously laughed and said. Yun Xiaodao snorted, and then left the martial courtyard. Although they belonged to this courtyard, they had their own places where they lived. They gathered only at the martial arts stage in the martial courtyard to discuss or meet. For example, Chen Xiang had now returned to the Extreme Dan King courtyard. The Extreme Dan King courtyard's gate was closed, but just after inserting a jade card in a hole it could be opened, and from one glance one knew that there was a bizarre array that had been arranged here. After entering the Extreme Dan King courtyard, Chen Xiang slightly sucked a deep breath. It was inexplicably deserted here, and not a single soul was here in this tremendously large area. After entering a building, the inside was decorated and it was very refined and elegant, with a light fragrance which made people feel very comfortable. Living in here one truly did not need to worry about being disturbed, as ordinary people could not enter the mysterious realm. Not to mention that no one dared to create chaos in the Elder Dan's Extreme Dan King courtyard. In here Chen Xiang picked one practicing room, then took out the beast's skin and observed it. This was what he obtained with the Azure Dragon slaughtering Devil Blade. The Dragon Slayer 7 killing cut. There are 7 moves, and you can use a weapon to cast it, but you can also use the hand as a knife to cast it. These 7 moves each have different characteristics, and they all have different powers which can adapt under different kinds of battle situations, but it needs a large amount of true qi. The 10th level of the mortal martial realm cannot afford to consume that much true qi, and one needs to be truly in the true martial realm to cast them out. Sei Meiyao said. She and Bai Yuyu in the past few days had been studying this dragon martial technique. This Dragon Slayer 7 killing cut is a dragon-slaying divine martial skill, and can only be used coordinating with your dragon aura. Now your utilization of dragon aura has already reached a high degree of proficiency, and as long as you can reach the true martial realm, you will be able to use the powerful Dragon Slayer 7 killing cut. Bai Yuyu said. Chen Xiang was a little disappointed, because to enter the true martial realm, he also needed a very long time, and he could not use this powerful dragon martial technique. This made his heart itch. It was as if a treasure was placed in front of him, but he couldn't take it. What is this Red Dan? Chun Xiang was very curious about this spirit Dan. As it was placed together with the azure dragon slaughtering devil blade, it was certainly not an ordinary Dan. Su Meiyao mentioning this Dan appeared to be very excited. This should be a dragon blood Dan, which is refined out from a dragon's blood essence. After you eat it, this Dan will melt into dragon blood, which in turn will surge into your body, making all of your meridians, skeleton, and muscles as powerful as a dragon. I think after you eat it you should be able to enter the threshold of the immortal devil body. TLN, one more chapter coming today. Chapter 105 First Level. Chapter 105 First Level. This chapter was sponsored by Sebastian. Thanks for your support. Smiley face. Chun Xiang sucked in a mouthful of cold air. He was extremely excited. What rank is this Dan? It's very difficult to set a definite value. To put it simply, it is an extremely rare Dan. You must know it is refined out of dragon blood, and so how can it be so easy to obtain? Su Meiyao said, this is also the first time I've ever encountered something like this. Regarding the heavenly dragon treasure mystery, Chun Xiang and the sisters discussed long and hard about it. Who forged the azure dragon slaughtering devil blade? According to legend, the dragon slaying 7 killing cut was part of the dragon slaying divine martial skill, and was created by a dragon. Of course, the dragon blood Dan as well could only be created by coordinating with a dragon. There's no need to think too much about it. Take it first and then we can talk after. Su Meiyao urged. When Chun Xiang held the dragon blood Dan in his hand, he felt an inexplicable burning sensation coming from it, making him somewhat fearful. His instincts told him that if he swallowed this Dan, it would certainly bring him quite a lot of pain. Chun Xiang undressed himself, and in one gulp, swallowed the dragon blood Dan. When it entered his throat, a heat was suddenly released as the dragon blood Dan melted in the blink of an eye, making Chun Xiang feel like he had just swallowed pure lava. The dragon blood Dan that had been transformed into liquid entered his stomach, which soon emitted a loud explosive sound, like a volcano that had just erupted. In that moment, endless stabbing pain surged throughout his 4 limbs and numerous bones, sending Chun Xiang's entire body into an intense spasm as he let out a horrible heartbreaking shriek. In just a few seconds, Chun Xiang's whole body was covered in dark blood. He looked extremely filthy. His muscles were inflated too, and the bones in his body felt like they were being burned in a furnace. In addition to all of this, his meridians bulged out like they were about to explode. Its effects are too astonies. Hi+ing. Hold on. Su Meiyao shouted in surprise, don't die. Bai Yuyu was also taken aback. Although she said it in her usual cold tone, her voice was full of concern. This process lasted longer than 3 hours. Chun Xiang felt that everything in his body was being refined in a furnace over and over again, as impurities within the blood got discharged from his pores and a foul stench was emitted from it. Yes. He's finally entered the first level of the immortal devil body. Su Meiyao exclaimed with a charming smile, as long as he passes this threshold, it will be much easier for him in the future. At this time, Chun Xiang was very dirty. He hastily stimulated the true qi within his body and transformed it into clean water, plussing off the sludge off his body. First level? How many levels are there in total? How far have I reached? Chun Xiang while was plussing his body said with a mischievous laugh, Sister Meiyao, come and help others to wash. Just a moment ago I was almost dead. Little rascal, nice try. If it was another place I might have thought about it, but here it is the extreme martial sect, and there are too many powerful guys. I'm worried about getting exposed, said Su Meiyao, in her charming voice with a shallow laughter. Humph, one grown man needs the help of others to bathe, that's really outrageous. Bai Yuyu coldly snorted and said, the immortal devil body, in total has September 9th, 81 levels, and under the first level of the immortal devil body, you can possess the kind of power that can help you elevate your strength by 30%. Even if you're now only using physical strength, it is not difficult for you to beat an ordinary 10th level mortal martial realm expert. TLN 9 levels with 9 sub-levels. A total of 81 levels. So to say, most of the martial artists only cultivate their true chi, and will only now and then exercise their body. So under ordinary circumstances, all of their true chi is far stronger than their body, but now your body is able to reach the same level as your true chi. Both inside and outside is very uniform, which allows you to have one very solid foundation, Su Meiyao slowly said. The person at the peak of the mortal martial world had only at most reached the 20th level of the immortal devil body, and you now are only at first level. How high do you think your starting point is? By you said, and she was very satisfied regarding this level of Chen Xiang's foundation. At least Chen Xiang had not disgraced the extreme divine vein given by her. Chen Xiang took a deep breath, looked at his own palms, and at this time he could clearly feel the strength inside his body. Two sisters, how many levels have you reached in the immortal devil body? Chen Xiang curiously asked. Not going to tell you. Su Meiyao mischievously smiled, and obviously she intended to hide it from Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang could obviously see this point, and he knew the origins of these two stunning girls were certainly more formidable than he had imagined. The originally 3,000 martial courtyards of the extreme martial sects had already been increased to 5,000. And with that the inner sect's martial courtyard had also been increased from 329 to 500, and only the 15 true disciple courtyards remained the same. It was because it still didn't have enough people to increase their count, and even if the peerless martial sect had been incorporated, martial artists of the true martial realm were not a lot, and that was why there was no increase. Thus it could be seen how meager the number of true martial realm martial artists were, and according to Chen Xiang's estimate there were only 200 true disciples in the extreme martial sect, practicing the immortal devil body to the first level. This meant that Chen Xiang's strength had also been elevated by a lot, and at this time he also wanted to advance a little forward in the martial courtyard. 500. They changed the number so quickly? Chen Xiang in front of the entrance of the martial courtyard was somewhat speechless, as this meant that they were even more farther behind. Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong both were here, and they knew Chen Xiang had entered the 10th level of the mortal martial realm. It was time to advance a little forward in the martial courtyards to look a little more imposing. Seeing Chen Xiang refres. Hi plus Ingli coming, Yun Xiaodao like an arrow shooting towards the sky, leapt up, gathered the fire and lightning true chi on his fists and punched, and a scorching heat and thunderbolts burst out at the same time, one after another violently exploding, which fiercely struck towards Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang immediately extended his palm, and with one hand grabbed Yun Xiaodao's fist perfusing with violent true chi, and in that moment, the fist produced a powerful explosion. However, Chen Xiang was the same as before and was still closely grabbing Yun Xiaodao's fist, powerfully standing there with a relaxed expression. At this time Yun Xiaodao only felt his own fist deeply embedded in there, and simply could not move. He was shocked. Just a moment ago Chen Xiang actually didn't even use a tiny bit of his true chi and simply received his fists. Although he himself didn't use much of his own true chi, but Chen Xiang's easygoing look was as if this fist of his were the same as those of a brat. Elder brother Chen, you. Yun Xiaodao looking shocked said, is this only physical strength? Almost. To temper this body, I suffered no small hards. Hi plus PS, Chen Xiang loosened Yun Xiaodao's fist, and slightly smiled. Although he mentioned it casually, but in the hearts of both Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong those words were the same as mighty waves in an ocean. Yun Xiaodao was relatively thin, while Zhu Rong was quite fat, and from one glance one could see that both of them hadn't tempered their body at all. It was because they knew that if they wanted to strengthen their body, they certainly needed to suffer various kinds of hard HI+PS, and they may not be capable of enduring that kind of hard work. Today Chen Xiang with his body alone could release such power. It could be seen that Chen Xiang had spent a large amount of effort to temper his body, which was absolutely something no ordinary person could withstand. "I'll now go and pick one martial courtyard," Chen Xiang said with a faint smile. Yun Xiaodao emotionally sucked in a deep breath. "Elder brother Chen, with our current strength should we not be able to challenge a martial courtyard?" If they wanted to move up the ranking of the martial courtyards, they had to challenge a higher ranking courtyard, and this was not a personal challenge but one martial courtyard challenging another martial courtyard in a battle. The more the ranking of a martial courtyard could move forward, the more benefits they could get. Of course, the sex-arranged missions would also be very important, and all of them were definitely going to be dangerous. Chapter 106 First-Ranked Inner Courtyard. Chapter 106 First-Ranked Inner Courtyard. To challenge other martial courtyards, one must take out an attractive ante, otherwise the other party would not accept the challenge. This challenge was just similar to a gamble. Yun Xiaodao rubbed his chin and looked at Zhu Rong. "Lao Zhu, according to you, which inner martial courtyard do you think is good for us to challenge?" Although Zhu Rong was an extreme martial sect disciple, but he could be considered as a businessman. Yun Xiaodao was sure that he must know which martial courtyard was relatively easy to challenge. Zhu Rong slightly smiled. "Now do you know my usefulness? Hey, from a long time ago I was waiting for this day. Now that in A lies the strength of the three of us, to win against the 400th martial courtyard will not be difficult, and we can even move a little forward, such as the 350th martial courtyard." Yun Xiaodao frowned a little and said, "That is too far behind. What do you all think about the 200th martial courtyard?" If the extreme martial sect had not fused with the peerless martial sect, they now would have been ranked 329th. Zhu Rong looked at Chen Xiang and said, "Chen Xiang, we should now move up steadily step by step, because if we lose in a martial courtyard challenge, we lose big time. I'll pay for whatever ante we take out for the challenge, so it's okay. Let's go and challenge the 200th martial courtyard." Yun Xiaodao patted his chest, as if he didn't care. Chen Xiang suddenly smiled and said, "Regarding the ante, leave it to me, and just the 200th martial courtyard? Xiaodao, you still look down upon me, how about 16th? What? Elder brother Chen, don't joke." Yun Xiaodao shaking his hand said. Zhu Rong also thought he was joking. "Chen Xiang, the 16th martial courtyard is the first-ranked inner courtyard, and the inner sect disciples inside of it are strongest. Besides, there are also 10 of them." Chen Xiang faintly smiled. 10? Seems to be more than what I normally imagined. If I use 5 metal spirit fruit for the bet, do you think they will accept the challenge? At this time, Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong realized that Chen Xiang was very unlikely telling a joke. When Chen Xiang was in 9th level of the mortal martial realm, his strength was comparable with people in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, and that was equivalent to the first-ranked inner courtyard's disciple's strength. But Chen Xiang had now entered the 10th level of the mortal martial realm. Obviously his strength had been greatly elevated, however. Up to what level was that elevation? When Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong thought about this point, their whole body could not help but be covered in goosebumps, because it was too frightening. "You dare or not dare to go? If you don't dare to go, I can by myself go, and at that time you can also live in that martial courtyard," Chen Xiang said, and 1 against 10 he was still very confident. "Do not look down upon me, although it has not been long since I've entered the inner courtyards, but if I tried my best, then those guys of the first-ranked inner courtyard also count for nothing." Yun Xiaodao clenched his teeth and ruthlessly said, "Those guys and I are going to fight, let's go." Chen Xiang and Yun Xiaodao both were looking at Zhu Rong, because in their impression Zhu Rong was a petty and timid fatty, and didn't have any fighting capacity. Zhu Rong, seeing them looking at him with an expression of contempt in their eyes, ignited a fire in his heart and loudly said, "You too Bastards, are you looking down on me? Tell you what, this father's looks is just to confuse others, and my true strength is very shocking. Aren't you just going to risk your life just to fight those first-ranked inner courtyards guys? Why shouldn't I dare? Father for a long time ago wanted to do that." Ha ha, seeing this dead fatty's face, I reckon that those people will wet their pants. Yun Xiaodao laughed and said, "Don't talk nonsense, let's go now." Zhu Rong spat and said. Chen Xiang too loudly laughed, and then took the lead and walked towards the 16th martial courtyard. On the streets of the extreme martial sect, 3 people with soaring slaughter chi were walking. In the middle there was a robust and handsome youth, and on either side of this youth there was a thin and small teenager and a chubby little fat boy. Looking at their age, all of them were below 20 years old, but at the moment slaughter chi was rising from them, and their eyes were fully belligerent. Seeing them, the people around could not help but make way for them. "That guy seems to be Chen Xiang. He is the guy who crippled Fong Liang with just one move, and he came from the secular world. He is also the one who received a true martial realm alchemist as his apprentice, and won first place in this year's alchemy compet. One Tian. Moreover, he is also a thorn in Elder Dan's eyes." A man whispered, "Because Chen Xiang in these 10 days didn't do anything, so after the integration of the Peerless Martial Sect, the Peerless Martial Sect disciples also knew nothing about him, but now after hearing Chen Xiang's various deeds, they too could not help but become surprised. Fatty, what are you planning to do?" At this time a middle-aged man with a long beard arrived, and this man is Hao Dongqing, one true martial realm martial artist. When Chen Xiang arrived at the extreme martial sect, he got a little help from him. "Lao Jiu, we want to challenge the first-ranked inner courtyard. Want to come and take a look?" Zhu Rong proudly smiled, and his words made everyone around him shocked. 3 people wanting to challenge the first-ranked inner courtyard. This made everyone feel that Chen Xiang and the other 2 were idiots, actually wanting to do such crazy thing. Hong Dongqing was also surprised, but when he saw Chen Xiang's pair of resolute pupils, he then faintly smiled. "You fatty found one good friend, finally able to do outrageous things. Such a good thing I will help you publicize, and I will go to fellow apprentices and ask them to watch it together, while conveniently doing a little gambling." Hao Dongqing left, and everyone around them too left, because these 3 idiots wanted to challenge the first-ranked inner courtyard, and such a good show they obviously wanted to watch it with their friends. First-ranked inner courtyard. That was the 16th martial courtyard, and there was only a 1-rank difference from the true disciples' martial courtyard, but the location was very different. Now the martial courtyard from the 1st to 15th have been moved inside the mysterious realm, and the disciples all enjoyed the rich spirit chi. Outside the mysterious realm, only the martial courtyards above the rank of 16th were located there. The 16th martial courtyard was rather very large, and this was originally the first martial courtyard, which looked like one manor. In the middle of where it was located was one very large tourney field which was currently full of people. All the people who were roping in others were the disciples of this martial courtyard, and all of others were either outer sect disciples or the inner sect disciples. Good fellas, they even have guards. Yun Xiaodao standing in that giant door cried, and listening to the sounds coming from the inside he was very shocked. Watching the tens of thousands of people in the huge square, he could not help but lament. Is this not a martial courtyard? This was simply one small city for training troops. This was the first-ranked inner courtyard's most compelling location, and the extreme martial sect's elders didn't oppose disciples forming a gang as long as they had not violated any sect rules, so they were allowed to form a gang. "We just want this nameplate." Zhu Rong pointed at one nameplate next to the entrance, and as long as they won the challenge, they would be able to hang this number plate in front of their own courtyard, and would be able to get great benefit. Chen Xiang slightly sucked a deep breath, interrupted the sounds and said, "The 500th martial courtyard came to challenge your courtyard, and the stakes are 5 metal spirit fruit. If you accept the challenge, please quickly come out to discuss." The noisy 16th martial courtyard suddenly quieted down, and Chen Xiang used his vigorous true qi to emit his voice, making it spread throughout every corner of this martial courtyard, making everyone hear it clearly. But the people inside were skeptical, and they thought they have heard wrong, because the challenge turned out to be from the 500th martial courtyard, and one must know usually the martial courtyards who came to challenge were generally below the 50th rank. But those metal spirit fruits were indeed very attractive.